In the dim glow of a single candle, its flame trembling in the draft of an old adobe mission house in 1743 New Spain, a dying Jesuit explorer struggled to breathe. The room around him felt suspended between two worlds, one of fading life, the other of a secret he had carried too long. His fingers, cracked from desert winds and years of handling brittle maps, clutched a small roll of parchment stained with sweat, dust, and something darker. A young novice knelt beside him, pressing a damp cloth to the man's forehead, whispering prayers he was too frightened to finish. Outside, cicadas rattled and a warm, empty night pressed against the walls, but inside, history shifted on a hinge. The explorer's eyes flickered open with sudden clarity, as though a quiet hand had brushed away the veil between life and memory. His voice, once commanding, now quivered like the last string of a breaking instrument. He called the novice closer and forced the brittle roll of parchment into his palms. Then, with a rasp that carried the weight of confession and warning, he whispered of a hidden map, one he claimed to have stolen from a place he was forbidden to enter. A map, he said, that did not belong to the church, nor to any kingdom of man, but to a brotherhood long erased from the world's official stories. He spoke the name with fear, reverence, and something deeper: the Knights Templar. The novice froze. Even after 4 centuries, the name carried a chill. Everyone knew of their fall, their trials, their torture, their ashes dissolved into river water by royal decree. But to hear that their relics survived, that a map of theirs still existed, was to step into territory the church had spent generations burying. The Jesuit's hand tightened with a desperate strength that belied his frail condition. His breath rattled as he described the strange symbols etched onto the parchment. 7 circles aligned like a constellation, a winding path stretching across lands no European had ever charted in the Middle Ages, and a phrase scrawled in an unfamiliar blend of Latin and something older. 7 golden cities beneath God's blind horizon. The novice, trembling, asked where the map came from. The answer shifted the air in the room. The Jesuit confessed that he had not found it in any archive or royal collection. No, he had taken it from a hidden chamber beneath a ruined Pueblo settlement in the northern deserts, a place no European expedition was supposed to have reached. He had been ordered by his superiors to destroy the artifact. Burn it, bury it, forget it ever existed. Instead, he had done the opposite. He had copied the symbols, followed their path, and seen things he believed no man should witness alone. His voice cracked as he spoke of a silent canyon where stones bore carvings shaped like Templar crosses, of abandoned dwellings built with uncanny geometric precision, of a final chamber sealed by a slab engraved with markings so ancient, so impossible. He dared not describe them in full. His journey, he admitted, had not brought him treasure, but fear that he had stumbled into a story woven long before his time, a story powerful enough to challenge the foundations of empire, faith, and history itself. The novice tried to soothe him, but the dying man shook his head violently, coughing up flecks of blood. He insisted that the map must be hidden but not destroyed, protected but not revealed, understood but only by those who approached it without greed. He warned that kings had killed entire orders for less. He whispered that the map charted a route towards 7 cities that were never meant to be found by conquerors, but by seekers, those willing to confront a truth the world was not prepared to accept. His last words trembled through the room like a prophecy. He whispered that the Templars had drawn this map centuries before Columbus ever set sail, that they had known of distant lands, had traveled them, and had left behind secrets buried in stone and silence, secrets powerful enough to ignite both awe and ruin. With one final breath, sharp, fragile, and final, the Jesuit's body fell still. The candle flickered, the parchment crackled in the novice's shaking hands, and the night outside seemed to lean into the room as if listening. The world did not yet know it, but in that moment, a forgotten thread of history had resurfaced. A thread that would unravel legends, expose betrayals, and illuminate a path no empire ever intended humanity to walk again. And it all began with a map that should never have existed. A cold October dawn crept across Paris in 1307, thin and pale, as if even the sun hesitated to rise on what was about to unfold. The city still slept under its blanket of fog, chimneys silent, market stalls empty, the Seine drifting quietly beneath its bridges. But in the narrow streets surrounding the temple, the fortress monastery of the Knights Templar, shadows moved with purpose. Boots struck cobblestones in perfect rhythm. Torches burned low, wrapped in cloth to muffle their glow. What approached was not an army, but something far more deliberate. A coordinated act of betrayal hours in the making. King Philip Ivy's men had waited for this moment. For weeks, sealed orders had been delivered across France with a command so absolute that none dared question it. At dawn on this day, every Templar in the kingdom was to be arrested simultaneously. They were to be taken alive, interrogated without mercy, and stripped of the power they had quietly gathered for 2 centuries. The king claimed heresy. He claimed corruption, blasphemy, idolatry. But those marching through the fog knew the truth whispered in taverns and chancelleries alike. Philip was drowning in debts. The Templars were his creditors. And kings, when cornered, rarely kneel, they strike. Inside the temple compound, most of the brothers were just beginning their morning rituals. Some prepared for prayer, others tended the stables, and a few maintained the armory as they did every day. Their routines were calm, disciplined, unchanged for generations. None of them could have imagined that before the sun rose fully, everything they had built, sworn to, and believed in would collapse. The first warning was a distant rumble of iron against stone. A young sergeant stepped outside to see what it was, only to find soldiers pouring through the gates with royal banners. They swarmed like a tide of metal and anger, and before he could cry out, he was slammed to the ground. Chaos erupted. Shouts echoed through the courtyards. Some Templars reached instinctively for weapons, but quickly realized the horror of the situation. Resisting the king was treason, and treason meant death, swift, public, and merciless. The soldiers seized them by the dozens, binding hands, dragging them through mud and stone. The accusations were shouted as if volume alone could make them true. Heretics, idolaters, enemies of the crown. The younger knights looked confused. The older knights looked betrayed. They had fought for Christendom, guarded pilgrims, faced Saracen blades, negotiated fragile truces, moved kings and popes with their influence. Yet here they were, criminals overnight, condemned without trial. In the commandery's upper chamber, Jacques de Molay, the Grand Master of the Order, had been in prayer when the door burst open. Age had carved lines into his face, but his presence remained imposing, his posture dignified even as he was seized. When the soldiers informed him of the charges, he stared at them with a mixture of disbelief and sorrow rather than fear. He asked to see the written decree. They refused. The king's will needed no parchment. As they dragged him outside, the Grand Master looked across the courtyard where his brothers were bound and bleeding. Some still shouted protests. Others bowed their heads in stunned silence. De Molay steadied himself, meeting the gaze of each man he could. His voice, carried by the cold air, was low but fierce. He declared that the order was innocent, that their fall would stain the king's soul, that God and history would remember this day not as a triumph of justice, but as an act of cowardice. But then, as he was forced toward the street, something broke within him. Not fear, but urgency. His head snapped toward the keep, the deepest part of the temple fortress where the order's most guarded secrets were kept. His voice cracked with a sudden, desperate intensity unfamiliar to those who had known him for decades. He shouted to the nearest knight, "Protect what must never be found." The soldiers yanked him forward, but he twisted long enough to shout again, louder this time, "Do not let it fall into their hands." Those words, so raw and uncharacteristic, struck the knights harder than any accusation. What was he referring to? Their treasury? Their ledgers? Relics from the Holy Land? Or something darker, something the world was not meant to see? Only the highest-ranking members of the order knew what lay in the vaults. And their faces, as those words echoed through the courtyard, revealed something chilling: fear. Real fear. The soldiers did not understand the significance of the Grand Master's cry, but the Templars did. And in that moment the truth became clear. The king's attack was not merely a seizure of wealth, nor a political purge. He sought something tucked away in the temple's deepest chamber. Something the order had protected for generations. Something worth killing an entire brotherhood for. As Jacques de Molay was dragged through the gates and onto the streets of Paris, crowds gathered in confusion. Some crossed themselves. Others whispered rumors that had festered for years. Secret rites, hidden gold, forbidden knowledge. The king's men capitalized on the chaos, parading the Grand Master like proof of their accusations, fueling stories that would justify what was to come. Behind him, the temple compound was sealed, its archives ransacked, its vaults forced open, its secrets exposed to eyes not meant to see them. And yet, even as the king's officers pried through chests and scrolls, they realized something unsettling. Something important was missing. Something that should have been there. Something that no inventory listed, no chronicler recorded, no treasure catalog mentioned. Whatever Jacques de Molay had cried out about, whatever he had feared falling into royal hands, had already vanished. It had been taken, hidden, moved, or spirited away long before the king's men arrived. The Templar Order had fallen, but the secrets they died protecting were already loose in the world, scattered into shadows where kings and inquisitors could not reach. And somewhere among those secrets lay the first clue to the map that should never have existed. In the centuries before their fall, long before they became symbols of power, wealth, and whispered conspiracy, the Knights Templar were little more than a handful of determined men. Their story began not with grandeur but with dust, Jerusalem's pale, choking dust that clung to armor, skin, and the souls of all who walked its contested roads. It was the year 1119 when 9 knights, weary from war but steadfast in faith, pledged themselves to a mission that seemed almost naive, to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. They carried no riches, commanded no fame, and slept in stables beneath the ruins of Solomon's temple. But out of this poverty, something extraordinary began to take shape. The early Templars lived austere lives. Their vows demanded silence, humility, and complete devotion. They were soldier monks, bound to a rule that stripped away the comforts and arrogance common among knights. Their meals were simple, often shared from a single wooden bowl. Their clothing was patched and worn. Their days alternated between prayer and patrol, their nights between restless sleep and the constant danger of ambush. Yet it was precisely this radical simplicity that earned them the admiration of pilgrims who, for the first time, could travel more safely across the war-torn landscapes between Jaffa and Jerusalem. Word of their dedication spread quickly. Within a decade, nobles across Europe spoke of the Templars with awe. They were brave, they were incorruptible, and they asked for nothing in return. This reputation caught the attention of Bernard of Clairvaux, one of the most influential churchmen of his time. With his support, the Templars received formal recognition from the Church, transforming them from a small, obscure brotherhood into an official military and religious order. With recognition came resources. With resources came power. And with power came secrets. By the mid-12th century, the order had established networks of commanderies stretching from Portugal to Palestine. These were not merely barracks, they were centers of intelligence, storage hubs, financial stations, and safe houses for the movement of information. Pilgrims often saw the Templars as valiant protectors on dusty roads, but behind their public image existed a far more complex machine. They maintained encrypted ledgers, used ciphers to communicate between outposts, and developed an early form of financial credit that allowed travelers to deposit money in Europe and withdraw it in the Holy Land. These innovations elevated the Templars into something rare, a religious order with both economic and geopolitical influence. Their strongholds became marvels of architecture and engineering. From the towering fortress at Safe to the formidable red stone walls of the fortress at Tortosa, Templar castles were designed with an eye for both defense and coded symbolism. Their layouts reflected geometric principles drawn from ancient traditions, circles, equilateral triangles, and specific alignments that hinted at knowledge the brothers rarely discussed openly. These patterns later fueled speculation that the Templars possessed esoteric teachings inherited from their contact with Eastern mystics, Jewish scholars, and Muslim astronomers. Whether true or exaggerated, one fact is undeniable. The Templars absorbed knowledge with the same intensity that they collected relics and fortified cities. The deeper their networks grew, the more the Templars learned that the world was far larger than most Europeans imagined. Caravans from distant lands brought spices, textiles, and stories of unimaginable places. Coastal kingdoms beyond deserts, islands beyond the western seas, and ruins older than scripture. These stories were exchanged in whispered conversations over fires, in dim halls where knights shared intelligence gathered from merchants, scholars, and soldiers who traveled farther than any chronicler could record. Slowly, these fragments of information formed patterns. The Templars began to understand the world not as a patchwork of warring kingdoms, but as a network of routes, cultures, and hidden corridors of knowledge. Their access to this global information made the order indispensable. Kings borrowed from them, popes trusted them, merchants crossed continents using their routes, and every step of this growing web was meticulously documented in ledgers, scrolls, and maps stored in the deepest chambers of Templar houses. Most Europeans believed these knights lived for the sword, but the truth is that they lived equally for intelligence. Information was their silent weapon. Yet with influence came inevitable whispers. How could an order that vowed poverty manage wealth greater than many monarchies? How could men sworn to obedience operate with such independence? And what knowledge did they collect that was too sensitive to record openly in their official archives? Rumors began to form around the cracks in their armor. Rumors of hidden relics. Rumors of strange alliances in the East. Rumors of maps that depicted coastlines unknown to medieval Europe. The Templars never confirmed such claims, but their silence only deepened the intrigue. And among their highest-ranking commanders, a belief began to take hold, that the world still held regions untouched by conquest or scripture, places where sacred truths, ancient civilizations, or lost wisdom might be waiting. This belief, whispered only within the order's inner chambers, became the seed of a mission far beyond crusading. A mission not sanctioned by any pope or king. A mission carried out quietly, cautiously, and over generations. Power brought wealth. Wealth brought secrets. And secrets, once gathered in the shadows of their commanderies and sealed in their vaults, reshaped the Templars into something far more enigmatic than the world could see. The Order's humble beginnings had given birth to a silent empire, one that stretched across continents, across cultures, and across the boundaries of what the medieval mind was willing to imagine. And deep within this empire lay the first whispers of a map unlike any crafted in Europe, a map that would one day drive kings to treachery and explorers to madness. In the early summer of 1291, as the last stronghold of the Crusader states trembled beneath the relentless assault of Mamluk forces, the port city of Acre became a place where hope and despair intertwined with every heartbeat. Smoke curled above its shattered walls. Siege engines thundered. The once mighty bastion of Christian presence in the Holy Land crumbled stone by stone, hour by hour. Knights, merchants, refugees, monks, and children all moved through the streets like ghosts searching for safety that no longer existed. Amid this chaos, a quiet and urgent operation unfolded, one that would later become a whisper in history, a rumor passed in taverns, and a riddle that scholars still struggle to decipher. The Templars knew the city was doomed. Their commanders had seen too many sieges, too many collapses, to cling to illusions. But they also knew something else, something far more terrifying than defeat. Within their fortress walls lay the heart of their order. Documents, scrolls, relics, coded accounts, encrypted correspondence, and sealed iron caskets containing items whose value exceeded any treasure on earth. These were not mere objects. They were the secrets the Order had gathered across centuries, through deserts and seas, in temples, libraries, and forgotten places where empires had turned to dust. Knowledge that did not belong in the hands of conquerors or kings. As the Mamluk forces breached Acre's outskirts, the Templar commanders convened in a chamber lit only by torches. Their faces were drawn, streaked with sweat and ash. They knew they could not defend the city, but they also knew the world would shift if the Order's secrets fell into enemy hands. The decision they made that night was as swift as it was fateful. They would not defend the fortress with every last sword. Instead, they would save what mattered most: the silent archive of the Order, the priceless records that told a different history than the one kings preferred, and something else, something sealed in the iron caskets that only a handful of men had ever seen. Near midnight, under a moon shrouded in smoke, a fleet of Templar ships slipped quietly toward the harbor, hidden in the shadow of the fortress wall. These were not war galleys but cargo vessels, fast, maneuverable, and built for long voyages. Their hulls bore no symbols, their sails were rolled tight, and their crews had been chosen with absolute care. Witnesses later described a strange procession of Templar brothers moving through the courtyard. Not armed fighters, but scribes, archivists, and high-ranking officers carrying bundles wrapped in cloth, chests bound in iron, and scroll cases sealed with wax. They moved with urgency but not panic, as if they had practiced this moment long before the siege began. Some claimed to see caskets so heavy that 6 men struggled to lift them, though none dared ask what lay inside. Others spoke of crates marked with unfamiliar symbols, circles intersected with straight lines, stars fused with geometric designs, and a 7-pointed emblem that appeared in no recorded Templar insignia. More troubling were the scroll tubes that glimmered with a faint metallic sheen, as though forged from a material no one could identify. Whatever these objects were, the knights guarding them did so with a kind of reverence that suggested the contents were not gold or jewels but something far more essential. As the first light of dawn touched the horizon, Acre's walls finally gave way. A roar surged through the city. The Templar fleet, still half hidden in the smoke, prepared to depart. At the harbor edge, a group of knights remained behind to delay the attackers. Their sacrifice would buy precious minutes. Minutes the ships needed to vanish into open water. These men knew they would not survive, yet they stood with grim resolve, forming a shield that looked almost ceremonial rather than defensive. When the first Templar ship pulled away from the dock, those nearby noticed a single banner hoisted above the deck. Not the red cross of the Order, but a plain white cloth. A sign of surrender, or a sign of secrecy? No one could say. The fleet moved silently, quickly swallowed by the morning mist rolling in from the sea. Witnesses reported that the ships turned not west toward Cyprus, where the surviving Christian forces had gathered, but south, skirting the coast before vanishing into the open Mediterranean. Rumors ignited instantly. Some said the fleet carried the famed Templar treasure, the accumulated wealth of 2 centuries. Others insisted it held relics of unimaginable power. But a few, those who had seen strange symbols on the caskets, whispered something altogether different. The convoy carried knowledge, maps, charts, manuscripts, objects that hinted at lands beyond known borders, alliances beyond recorded history, and truths that no king or pope had ever been meant to learn. When Acre fell later that morning, the surviving Templars inside the fortress either died fighting or were taken captive. The secret convoy became the Order's final act of preservation. It existed only in fragments of testimony: an escaping sailor, a dying knight muttering about the ships of the dawn, a merchant who claimed he saw vessels without flags drifting along the coast for days. Centuries later, when kings searched for the Templar treasury after the Order's fall, they found vaults shockingly empty. No gold, no relics, no master scrolls. It was as if the heart of the Order had simply evaporated. But those who remembered the fleet knew the truth. The Templars had not lost their treasure. They had moved it long before danger arrived. What remained unanswered was the purpose behind the iron caskets and the cryptic maps that had been smuggled away. Why did the Order hide these items with such urgency? Where were the ships meant to go? And why did so many symbols found on those crates resemble lands and cosmologies that medieval Europe believed did not yet exist? In the end, only one certainty emerged. The vanishing treasure convoy of Acre was not about wealth. It was about safeguarding something far more disruptive, something that, in the wrong hands, could reshape the world's understanding of its own past. And buried in that mystery lay the earliest threads that would one day lead to the map no one was meant to find. Medieval Europe, for all its knights and kings, was a world mapped more by imagination than by observation. Most maps of the 13th century were circular, theological in nature, with Jerusalem at the center and the edges of the world painted in monstrous beasts and empty oceans. But somewhere in the secret chambers of the Templar Order, a different kind of cartography existed, maps not meant for public display, not meant for scholars or merchants, but for eyes initiated into a hidden knowledge. These were not mere charts of geography. They were encoded with symbols, coordinates, and mysteries that could only be understood by those trained in the subtle language of the order. Historians have often overlooked the sophistication of Templar cartography. Unlike ordinary medieval maps, which were static and schematic, these secret charts were dynamic. Lines of longitude and latitude were hinted at through patterns of crosses, circles, and intersecting triangles. Rivers, mountains, and deserts were drawn with meticulous care, but more importantly, the maps contained markers that suggested routes unknown to conventional explorers. Inland passages, hidden ports, and landmarks that did not correspond to any recognized kingdom. It was as if the Templars had glimpsed the world before it was fully revealed to the rest of Europe. Among the most intriguing of these charts were the so-called forbidden maps, fragments discovered later in the 17th and 18th centuries, often in the hands of collectors, rogue scholars, or men who had stumbled upon the Order's dispersed archives. One fragment depicted a coastline stretching far beyond the known Atlantic, dotted with strange symbols that historians could not decipher. Another suggested the existence of a vast continent west of Europe, lands the Church did not acknowledge, and that maps of the era either ignored or depicted as empty voids filled with sea monsters. The implications were staggering. These were European men, decades before Columbus, charting territories across the ocean that official history insisted were unknown. The symbols themselves were a riddle. Circles intersected with diagonal lines, resembling the 7-pointed stars later found in manuscripts associated with the Templars. Numbers, seemingly random, were often aligned with astrological constellations, hinting at a sophisticated understanding of celestial navigation. Latin phrases appeared sporadically, but even these were interspersed with words that matched no known European language, words possibly borrowed from the East, or perhaps a coded dialect known only to the Order. Scholars speculated that these inscriptions represented not merely directions but encoded messages, instructions, warnings, or keys to unlock locations of profound importance. What added to the mystery was the connection between these maps and the legends of a distant continent. Chroniclers, writing decades later, spoke of pale men seen along the western coasts of the Americas, carrying banners and emblems that resembled Templar crosses. They spoke of settlements where architecture mirrored European designs, but with local adaptations, structures that incorporated astronomical alignments foreign to indigenous builders. Whether these accounts were accurate or fanciful was impossible to determine, yet the convergence of the maps and these stories suggested a tantalizing possibility. The Templars may have ventured farther than anyone had imagined, charting lands centuries before the age of exploration. The most controversial element of these maps, and the one that would eventually connect to the lost Jesuit map centuries later, was the depiction of inland locations marked with cryptic symbols, places referred to as the Seven Cities or Seven Sanctuaries. Some historians argue that these were allegorical, moral constructs, reflecting spiritual centers of the Templars' esoteric knowledge. Others suggest they were literal, real settlements or hidden sites containing treasure, relics, or information the Order had deemed too dangerous to leave exposed. What is clear is that the Templars invested enormous effort into encoding these points, often using geometry, celestial alignments, and even underground markers to ensure that only those with the proper knowledge could locate them. To the modern eye, these maps appear almost prophetic. They suggest an understanding of the world that predates the discoveries of navigators like Magellan, Cortez, or Cabot. They hint at a deliberate concealment of knowledge, a refusal to let the wider world know that certain continents and civilizations existed, or that certain wisdom had already been gathered and safeguarded. And for centuries, the very existence of these maps was denied, suppressed, or dismissed as the delusions of ambitious monks or the fantasy of treasure hunters. Yet for those who studied the fragments carefully, the implications were impossible to ignore. The Templars had not simply hoarded wealth or power. They had, through maps, symbols, and secret archives, documented a reality that challenged the accepted worldview of medieval Europe. They had glimpsed the edges of the known world, and had reached beyond them in ways that seemed both audacious and impossible. It is within this context that the idea of pre-Columbian exploration emerges, not merely as legend, but as a question grounded in evidence, subtle yet persistent. Were these forbidden charts proof that the Templars had crossed oceans, traveled through unknown lands, and mapped what Europe refused to acknowledge? Or were they elaborate symbolic codes meant to mislead outsiders while guiding only the faithful? Either way, the existence of these maps planted the seeds of one of history's most enduring mysteries. How much did the Templar Order truly know about the world, and what did they hide in plain sight? In the quiet vaults and hidden chambers of Europe and the New World, these charts waited, fragmented, fragile, and enigmatic, carrying the memory of journeys no one was supposed to take. And it is from these delicate fragments, preserved against time and secrecy, that the lost map found by the Jesuit explorer in 1743 would eventually emerge, revealing not just geography, but a conspiracy, a legend, and a route toward the 7 golden cities that would forever challenge our understanding of history. The idea that the Templars might have reached lands beyond Europe seemed impossible to many historians, yet fragments of evidence suggest they were not ordinary knights, confined to castles and crusader fortresses. Their maritime skills were remarkable, honed over decades of war and pilgrimage. The Mediterranean, fraught with pirates, rival fleets, and treacherous storms, became for the Order both a battlefield and a classroom. By necessity, they mastered navigation not through the crude methods available to most, but through careful observation of the stars, winds, and currents. Their ships, unlike the slow merchant vessels of the period, were sleek and purpose-built, capable of outrunning corsairs and covering vast distances while transporting not only knights and supplies, but also the Order's most precious secrets. Yet the Templars' maritime reach extended far beyond the Mediterranean. Evidence suggests that they had outposts along the western coasts of the Iberian Peninsula, in ports such as Porto, Lisbon, and Seville. From these locations, they could access the Atlantic, a vast, largely uncharted ocean that medieval Europe regarded with suspicion and fear. Documents, some found hidden in later centuries, speak of white-cloaked men who travel west, and sails that vanish into fog where no map dares follow. These cryptic notes hint that the Templars were probing unknown seas, testing routes that would not be officially charted for decades, if not centuries. Local legends along the coasts of Spain and Portugal speak of mysterious visitors, men in white tunics with red crosses, arriving on fast, unmarked ships. They were said to trade not only goods but knowledge, sharing mathematical insights, star charts, and navigational secrets that confounded ordinary sailors. Some chroniclers describe them as pale, solemn, and silent, leaving almost no trace of their passage, yet leaving behind structures, symbols, and records that persisted long after they vanished. Could these accounts represent a Templar expedition westward, toward lands across the ocean that Europe did not yet officially know existed? Perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from indigenous oral traditions in the Americas. Centuries after the Templars' disappearance, some tribes told of visitors from across the sea, men who arrived long before the Europeans typically recognized in the history books. They were described as bringers of knowledge, teachers of metalwork, astronomy, and geometry. Some stories suggest that these visitors were not conquerors but emissaries, traveling for purposes that mix curiosity, faith, and secret agreements with the local peoples. The similarity between these accounts and reports of Templar activity in the Old World is striking, though scholars have debated whether they are coincidental, misremembered, or rooted in a forgotten historical reality. The Templars' apparent ability to reach such distant shores was aided by their intricate understanding of navigation and astronomy. They studied the night sky with meticulous care, correlating the positions of stars to calculate latitude, a method far more precise than most sailors of their time could achieve. They kept detailed records of wind patterns, ocean currents, and seasonal storms, information critical for long voyages. Their charts, encrypted and protected, often contained multiple layers of meaning, A route could appear to be a simple coastline, yet within its curves and angles were hidden markers indicating safe harbors, freshwater sources, or secret landing sites. Moreover, the Order maintained a network of scouts and informants along the Atlantic coasts. These men reported unusual sightings, trade winds, and currents. Messages were sent via couriers and coded parchments, sometimes crossing kingdoms and seas, allowing the Templars to refine their knowledge over decades. With this infrastructure, it is conceivable that they could have reached lands unknown to other Europeans, even venturing into the Caribbean, Mesoamerica, or the northern reaches of South America. Yet, despite these capabilities, the Templars left almost no trace of direct contact. No European settlement predating Columbus has been conclusively linked to them. No contemporary chronicle openly records their voyages. This deliberate silence may have been intentional. The Order operated with secrecy as both shield and strategy. Knowledge of lands across the ocean, of peoples and resources unknown to the crowns of Europe, would have been dangerous if revealed. It could invite conquest, theft, or worse, ecclesiastical censure for overstepping divine mandate. It is within this intersection of maritime mastery, secrecy, and ambition that legends begin to take shape. The stories of white-cloaked men along unknown coasts, of rapid ships that vanished into fog, of strange symbols left behind in villages and temples, all converge with tantalizing fragments from Templar archives. They suggest that the Order was not merely a military and religious institution, but a sophisticated intelligence network capable of projecting power and influence far beyond conventional perception. The idea of the Templars reaching the Americas, while controversial, fits a pattern of ambition, capability, and secrecy. It is possible that they were not the first Europeans to cross the Atlantic, but they may have been among the first to map it, to chart it, and to embed those charts with meaning that only the faithful could decode. Each line drawn, each symbol etched, each path noted on a scroll was not merely for navigation. It was a breadcrumb, a record of discovery, and perhaps a warning. And so, the legend of the Templar westward expeditions survives in shadows, in fragments of maps, in whispered tales from the old and new worlds, in the anomalies of architecture and astronomy that defy easy explanation. They leave behind a tantalizing question. If the Templars did travel to the Americas, what were they seeking? What did they find? And what did they leave behind for others to discover centuries later? The threads of these voyages, stitched together from legends, documents, and maps, point inexorably toward the 7 golden cities, mythical destinations that became less about treasure and more about the preservation of knowledge, culture, and secret wisdom that the Templars believed the world was not yet ready to embrace. The legend of the 7 golden cities has haunted explorers, chroniclers, and treasure hunters for centuries. Known variously as Cibola, Quivira, and sometimes the 7 sanctuaries, these cities were described in Spanish accounts of the New World as places of unimaginable wealth. Streets paved with gold, towers glinting in the sun, and riches that could make kings humble and armies greedy. But beneath the surface of these stories lay a far deeper mystery, one that entwined myth, geography, and human ambition in a web almost too intricate to unravel. European chroniclers of the 16th century spoke of these cities with both awe and skepticism. Tales came from conquistadors, missionaries, and traders who traversed deserts, rivers, and mountains in search of these legendary places. Some claimed to have seen signs, walls glimmering in the distance, unfamiliar architecture, or traces of advanced metallurgy. Others confessed disappointment after months of treacherous travel, finding only arid plains, abandoned villages, or the footprints of creatures no European had imagined. Yet the stories refused to die. Every account, whether first-hand or whispered, pointed to something extraordinary hidden in the landscapes of the Americas. But what connected these cities to the Templars? That connection is subtle yet profound. Scholars who have studied Templar maps and the fragments recovered in New Spain centuries later noticed recurring symbols. 7 points arranged in a deliberate formation, circles intersecting lines, and coded annotations that hinted at destinations beyond mere gold. To the untrained eye, these were abstract marks, geometric curiosities at best. But to the Templars, they were a roadmap, not only to physical locations but to sites imbued with spiritual, astronomical, or cultural significance. The 7 golden cities may have been real places, but they also functioned as markers of a hidden journey, one meant to preserve knowledge and sacred truths rather than material wealth. Travelers in the 16th and 17th centuries often interpreted these markers literally, driven by greed, ambition, or religious zeal. They sought gold, silver, and precious stones, unaware that the Templars' original mission was far different. The cities were described in metaphorical language, perhaps deliberately to shield them from unworthy seekers. When early missionaries spoke of Cibola, they referred not only to its material splendor but to the wisdom of its inhabitants, their mastery of astronomy, agriculture, and architecture. The pattern of 7 may have represented perfection, cosmic order, or a moral code rather than gold deposits. Moreover, there are tantalizing hints that the Templars themselves might have glimpsed these cities, or at least known of their locations, centuries before Columbus. The maps they carried, passed in fragments across Europe and eventually into the hands of Jesuit explorers in New Spain, suggest routes and locations that match indigenous oral traditions of lost settlements rich in knowledge and culture. In many indigenous accounts, the visitors are described as pale men, strange yet respectful, who traded wisdom, metalworking techniques, and star knowledge. These narratives resonate eerily with Templar practices, a careful balance of protection, exchange, and secrecy. The 7 cities were thus never solely about material wealth. They represented a convergence of human ambition, spiritual aspiration, and the pursuit of knowledge. Each city was a node in a network, potentially aligned with celestial events, rivers, or mountain passes. Some historians have speculated that the arrangement of these cities reflects principles found in sacred geometry, the same principles used in Templar architecture, from the circular chapels to the precise layouts of their fortresses. This suggests that the Templars were not merely mapping the physical world but weaving a symbolic landscape in which geography, astronomy, and morality intersected. What is more, the pursuit of these cities highlights the human element, the courage, desperation, and sometimes cruelty of those who sought them. Expeditions often faced hostile terrain, extreme weather, and the constant threat of conflict. Many men perished in deserts or rivers, driven not by simple curiosity but by obsession, greed, or the promise of fame. Yet despite repeated failures, the legend endured, passing from one generation of explorers to the next, growing more elaborate, more alluring, more dangerous. And so the 7 golden cities became both real and symbolic. They were a treasure map and a moral test. They represented an invitation to seek knowledge and virtue, but only for those willing to confront their own motivations and limits. The Templars, in crafting their secret maps, may have understood this perfectly. For them, the journey was as critical as the destination. They sought not only to preserve the city's secrets but to ensure that only those with the right intentions, wisdom, and patience could uncover them. By connecting the legend of these cities to Templar exploration, a startling possibility emerges. The Order may have extended its mission far beyond Europe and the Mediterranean, venturing into unknown lands to safeguard knowledge and establish hidden sanctuaries. The 7 golden cities, then, were never merely a myth of wealth. They were waypoints on a path designed to transmit culture, science, and moral guidance across continents. Ultimately, the quest for these cities illustrates a fundamental tension in human history: the collision between desire and destiny, ambition and wisdom. Some sought gold and power, others sought knowledge and enlightenment. The Templars, in their secrecy and discipline, may have glimpsed the difference, leaving behind clues and maps that centuries later would challenge explorers, scholars, and even modern historians to reconsider what it truly meant to be wealthy, to be powerful, and to hold secrets worth guarding. The journey toward the 7 golden cities was therefore not merely a physical expedition. It was a quest for understanding, a pursuit of the hidden intersections of human and cosmic knowledge, and a story of an order whose reach and vision extended far beyond the temporal confines of kings, wars, and empires. And buried in the symbols, the ciphers, and the maps, one can still detect the faint echo of the Templars' ultimate purpose. Not conquest, but preservation; not greed, but insight; and not treasure, but truth. By the early 16th century, centuries after the fall of Acre and the suppression of the Templar Order, whispers of hidden knowledge and secret routes had persisted in Europe and across the Atlantic. Scholars, merchants, and missionaries all carried fragments of stories, tales of cryptic maps, lost cities, and expeditions that seemed to predate Columbus. Among those who listened closely were the Jesuits, a new and disciplined order of the Church, who saw themselves as both seekers and guardians of knowledge. Their eyes, trained in observation, their hands, skilled in record-keeping, and their minds, disciplined in logic and faith, positioned them uniquely to uncover the traces of the Templars' hidden paths. In the remote reaches of New Spain, the Spanish crown had commissioned a series of explorations into territories still largely unknown to Europeans. From arid deserts to dense jungles, the land was a puzzle of rivers, mountains, and settlements untouched by Spanish rule. It was here, in the shadows of these vast landscapes, that Jesuit explorers began to stumble upon anomalies, artifacts, ruins, and symbols that bore an uncanny resemblance to those depicted in Templar maps preserved in Europe. Crosses, geometric patterns, and inscriptions in strange dialects appeared in the most isolated of sites, often in alignment with celestial markers, hinting at a deeper intelligence behind their placement. One of the most remarkable of these discoveries occurred in 1743, when a Jesuit explorer, whose name would later become a footnote in history, embarked on a solitary expedition into the northern deserts of New Spain. His mission was ostensibly one of religious observation and mapping for colonial administration, but the explorer carried with him an insatiable curiosity, a fascination with old orders, lost knowledge, and the whispers of men who traveled before him. He had studied fragments of Templar records, obscure maps hidden in private collections, and marginal notes in European libraries that mentioned strange routes, unknown cities, and treasures both material and intellectual. Each clue, fragmentary though it was, led him inexorably toward the same region, a place where few dared to tread. The terrain he faced was brutal. Wind-swept mesas, jagged canyons, and scorching plains tested his resolve. He traveled alone, accompanied only by the occasional local guide and the ever-present threat of isolation. Each night, as he unfurled his maps by lantern light, he traced the lines, the symbols, and the strange markers that seemed almost alive on the parchment. The patterns suggested paths through mountains, valleys hidden from casual observation, and rivers that did not appear on contemporary maps. It was as if the maps themselves were a living record, guiding the faithful toward something the world had almost forgotten. During one particularly intense night, the explorer discovered a series of stone formations that mirrored those depicted on the Templar fragments. He realized with a mixture of awe and dread that these markers were not random. They were deliberate signals, placed to guide those who understood their meaning. Some stones bore engravings that resembled Templar crosses. Others carried geometric patterns aligning with the stars, hinting at navigation techniques that would have been astonishingly advanced for the medieval period. There was an unmistakable intelligence in their placement, a conscious effort to transmit information across generations and continents. The explorer's most profound discovery, however, came in a ruined settlement that had long been abandoned. Beneath layers of sand and debris, he uncovered a hidden chamber, sealed with a slab carved with unfamiliar symbols. The walls of this chamber were inscribed with faint, nearly imperceptible markings. Lines, circles, and cryptic words blending Latin with characters that did not belong to any known European alphabet. It was here, in the quiet of the desert night, that he first held the rolled parchment that would become known as the Lost Map. Its texture was brittle, its edges worn, and yet it radiated an almost magnetic importance. As he unfurled the map, the explorer realized it contained something extraordinary, a path through territories uncharted by Europeans, connecting markers that seemed to correspond to the legendary 7 golden cities. The symbols were both geographic and symbolic, suggesting that the map was not merely a guide to physical locations, but a coded narrative of discovery, culture, and knowledge. Every line and mark hinted at a journey that had spiritual, intellectual, and practical dimensions, revealing the careful planning of an order that had operated in secret for centuries. The weight of the discovery pressed upon him. The knowledge contained in this map could alter the understanding of history itself. It connected the medieval Templars with unexplored lands of the New World, implying that a secret network had survived centuries of suppression, hiding in plain sight through coded maps, symbols, and architecture. The realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. The world had been far more interconnected than previously acknowledged, and this single document represented a thread that, if pulled, could unravel centuries of accepted historical narratives. In that moment, the explorer made a choice that would define the map's fate. He did not reveal it to authorities, nor did he attempt to exploit its contents. Instead, he hid it carefully, carrying with him only the knowledge necessary to navigate its paths in the future. He understood the danger the map posed. Kings, conquerors, and even fellow scholars might seek it not for discovery, but for power. To preserve its secrets was to protect not only knowledge, but the delicate balance of history itself. And so, the lost map of the Templar Order remained hidden in the deserts of New Spain, a silent witness to the centuries-long legacy of an order whose influence stretched far beyond the walls of castles and the chronicles of Europe. Its existence proved that some knowledge was too potent to be left unguarded, that some truths were meant for seekers rather than rulers, and that the journey toward understanding the 7 golden cities was not only one of geography, but of the human spirit, courage, and the enduring pursuit of wisdom. The lost map, once in the hands of the Jesuit explorer, became more than a tool for navigation. It became a symbol of a hidden history that the world was never meant to see. Unlike ordinary maps, which depicted rivers, mountains, and cities for practical purposes, this map was layered with meaning, combining geography with coded signals, symbols, and references that spoke to the Order's deepest secrets. Its lines were drawn with precision, yet the meaning behind them was not immediately obvious. Circles intersected with triangles, points connected by faint dashed lines, and clusters of small symbols hinted at something far beyond simple settlements. To the untrained eye, it might appear as nothing more than an intricate work of art. To those initiated into the Templar legacy, however, it represented a path toward understanding, toward the 7 golden cities and perhaps beyond. The map itself was smaller than a full parchment sheet, yet its content was densely packed. There were sequences of numbers arranged in patterns that seemed to correspond with celestial events. Latitude and longitude were indicated, but in a form that suggested knowledge of astronomy far more advanced than most Europeans of the 13th or 14th centuries possessed. Tiny symbols marked locations that did not appear on contemporary maps. Rivers that vanished into deserts, mountain passes that did not correspond with known ranges, and settlements whose names were written in a language that merged Latin with a code known only to the Templars. There were also markings that suggested underground passageways, hidden caches, and sanctuaries. Every inch of the parchment radiated intention, as if the map were alive, guiding its reader along a path that spanned continents, generations, and centuries of secrecy. The Jesuit explorer spent weeks studying the map in the solitude of his temporary desert refuge. Each night, under the flicker of candlelight, he traced the lines with a trembling finger, attempting to discern the logic behind the symbols. He realized that the map was not merely about physical geography. It encoded history, cosmology, and morality. Some locations were clearly markers of resources or settlements, but others seemed to correspond to spiritual or astronomical alignments. One set of symbols appeared to match the rising and setting of certain stars at solstices, while another suggested hidden rivers that could provide safe passage through otherwise impassable desert. The explorer began to understand that the Templars had not merely hidden a route. They had hidden knowledge itself, preserved across centuries for those who could interpret it. The significance of the map went beyond its navigational capacity. It represented a link between medieval Europe and the New World, a proof that the Templars, or those following in their footsteps, had mapped territories far beyond what was officially acknowledged. The 7 golden cities, legendary as they were, became tangible in his mind. Not merely locations of wealth, but destinations of enlightenment and discovery. Each symbol hinted at something more profound, an intersection of culture, science, and spirituality that challenged the assumptions of the explorer's own time. He began to see the cities not as places to conquer, but as repositories of ancient wisdom, carefully safeguarded by those who understood its power. Yet the map also carried a sense of danger. The Jesuit understood that knowledge of its existence could provoke envy, greed, or violent pursuit. Kings, governors, and adventurers alike might seek it, not for understanding but for exploitation. In that moment, he realized the weight of stewardship. To safeguard the map was to preserve history itself. If it fell into the wrong hands, centuries of Templar secrecy could be unraveled, and with it, the delicate balance of information the Order had worked to maintain. To protect the map, he chose concealment over revelation. He memorized portions of the route, carefully recorded only fragments that would allow him to navigate without revealing the entirety of the path. The remainder was hidden in a chamber of stone and sand, sealed in such a way that only a determined and knowledgeable seeker could uncover it. This act of concealment was deliberate, a continuation of the Templar tradition of guarding knowledge against those who lacked the wisdom to wield it responsibly. Over the following weeks, the explorer began to cross-reference the map with known landmarks, celestial alignments, and oral histories from local populations. He noticed correlations between the Templar symbols and indigenous structures, natural formations, and ancient trails. There was a pattern. The map did not lead randomly across the continent. It led to places where human ingenuity and natural geography intersected in remarkable ways. Valleys that provided water in the desert, caves that sheltered against storms, and plains aligned with astronomical events that marked time and season. The Templars had encoded not only navigation but survival and understanding, ensuring that only those who could read their signs would find the path fully revealed. By the time the explorer completed his initial survey, he realized the profound implications of the map. It was not a simple relic. It was a bridge between eras. Through it, the intentions of the Templars, men who had vanished centuries before, could be traced across oceans and centuries to the New World. It connected past knowledge with present exploration, legend with reality, and myth with the tangible world. The lost map was not merely a document. It was a living testament to human curiosity, courage, and the enduring desire to safeguard knowledge against the ravages of time, ambition, and ignorance. And as he carefully re-rolled the fragile parchment, placing it back in its hidden sanctuary, the Jesuit understood one immutable truth. The map was only as powerful as those who could interpret it. It demanded patience, intelligence, and moral clarity. Misuse could destroy lives, empires, or centuries of hidden wisdom. But in the hands of the worthy, it could reveal a path not just to cities of gold, but to the deeper secrets of the world itself. A path that would echo across centuries, drawing the curious, the brave, and the enlightened toward the 7 golden cities, and toward the enduring legacy of the Templar Order. The secrecy surrounding the lost map and the Templar legacy was not limited to parchment and symbols. It extended into the very networks of people who had survived the fall of the Order and carried its knowledge forward. After the dramatic suppression of the Templars in 1307, many knights were executed, imprisoned, or forced into obscurity, but a number of brothers vanished without a trace. Some went into monastic life, others into exile in distant lands, yet all carried the memory of the Order's mission: to protect, preserve, and, when necessary, conceal knowledge that could disrupt the balance of power in Europe and beyond. This hidden network became a shadowed lineage, passing fragments of maps, codes, and instructions from one generation to the next, ensuring that the Templars' reach extended far longer than history officially recorded. By the 16th and 17th centuries, these remnants had integrated with emerging European institutions of knowledge and exploration. Scholars, merchants, and explorers often unknowingly acted as custodians of Templar secrets. Some were Jesuits, trained in observation and record-keeping, who found themselves navigating territories the Order had long studied. Others were private collectors of manuscripts and maps, who purchased or inherited Templar documents without fully comprehending their significance. Across Europe, these fragments of Templar knowledge formed a network of influence that extended from the libraries of Paris and Rome to the port cities of Lisbon, Seville, and Amsterdam. The network operated with an astonishing level of discipline and foresight. Messages were encoded, travel routes carefully documented, and critical information disguised as religious instruction, trade records, or mathematical treatises. Only those trained to recognize the signs could interpret the hidden meanings. A cross drawn in the margin could indicate a river crossing. A geometric symbol could mark a safe route through mountainous terrain. A seemingly obscure phrase could reference a celestial event necessary for timing a journey. The Templars' successors understood that the value of the information lay not in its immediacy, but in its survival. Knowledge was a weapon, and secrecy its most essential form of protection. When the Jesuit explorer of 1743 arrived in New Spain, he was not the first to follow these hidden threads, nor the last. Previous travelers had caught glimpses of Templar symbols on walls, in ruins, or inscribed on stones near rivers and mountains. Some interpreted them as decorative motifs or religious iconography, while others, those with access to European fragments of maps, recognized the significance. Each discovery was a fragment of a greater whole, a breadcrumb left across centuries by men who had understood that true wisdom was never meant for the careless or the greedy. The network also functioned through oral tradition. In some European households, stories of Templar valor and secrecy were whispered quietly, often cloaked as family legend. These tales contained instructions disguised as anecdotes. A story of a knight hiding a casket in a monastery might encode instructions for locating a hidden archive. A tale of a pilgrim traveling west could preserve an approximation of a Templar route across the Atlantic. When such stories reached explorers in the New World, they sometimes aligned with physical markers, stone formations, river bends, or ruins, that echoed what the maps described. The Templars had understood that knowledge carried in human memory, as much as in parchment, could survive even the most devastating upheavals. Yet maintaining this network required more than secrecy. It required trust, discipline, and a shared understanding of moral responsibility. The Templars and their successors were acutely aware that knowledge in the wrong hands could bring devastation. Maps revealing hidden passages, secret treasures, or advanced engineering knowledge could incite violence, colonization, or exploitation far beyond what the Order intended. Thus, the custodians of this knowledge developed codes of conduct, teaching successors not only how to read and interpret the maps but also how to discern who was worthy of knowing. In this way, the Templar legacy was safeguarded not merely by ink and parchment, but by ethics and judgment. The existence of this network also explains why the lost map remained hidden for centuries. It was never meant to be discovered easily. Its guardians understood that revealing the path prematurely could compromise the very purpose of the Order, the preservation of knowledge, culture, and strategic intelligence across continents. Each map fragment, encoded symbol, and whispered story was a calculated layer of security, designed to ensure that only a capable, patient, and morally aware seeker could piece together the journey toward the 7 golden cities. By the time the Jesuit explorer found the map, the network had been operating for over 4 centuries, quietly directing explorers, scholars, and guardians across Europe and into the New World. The discovery of the map was therefore not an isolated event, but the continuation of a centuries-long chain of stewardship, a testament to the enduring foresight of the Templars and their successors. Through this network, knowledge had survived kings, wars, and the collapse of empires, preserving a vision of the world that extended far beyond the visible borders of medieval Europe. The lost map was more than parchment. It was the embodiment of a network's purpose, discipline, and secrecy. It represented the invisible hand of a centuries-old order, guiding, protecting, and ultimately challenging the world to recognize that what lay hidden often carried more value than what was openly celebrated. In understanding this network, we begin to grasp the magnitude of the Templars' ambition, not merely to conquer or protect, but to safeguard knowledge, to shape history quietly, and to leave a path for the worthy to follow, leading ultimately to the legendary 7 golden cities and the deeper truths that lay beyond. As the Jesuit explorer delved deeper into the regions indicated on the lost map, he began to notice a subtle interplay between geography, symbolism, and human settlement. The map did not simply depict physical locations. It seemed to guide its reader along a journey of discovery where the environment itself became a teacher. Rivers were not just watercourses but pathways connecting hidden valleys and sacred sites. Mountain ranges were not merely obstacles but markers aligned with the stars, the sun, and the moon at specific times of the year. Each waypoint encoded lessons in observation, navigation, and understanding of the natural world, a knowledge the Templars had cultivated over decades of disciplined study and secret travel. The landscape of New Spain presented challenges that were formidable even to a skilled navigator. Arid deserts stretched for miles, interrupted only by sporadic oases. Jagged canyons rose like ancient fortresses, and forests of towering trees concealed hidden trails. To the untrained eye, this terrain was forbidding, nearly impassable. But with the guidance of the map, the explorer began to discern a pattern. Each line, symbol, and notation corresponded with features in the land, revealing routes that were otherwise invisible. Where ordinary maps showed empty spaces or uncharted lands, the lost map indicated hidden passes, reliable water sources, and even natural signs left intentionally to mark the journey for those who could read them. It quickly became apparent that the Templars' cartography was not only practical but deeply symbolic. Circles drawn around specific locations suggested protection, sanctity, or perhaps sites of concentrated knowledge. Triangles, often aligned with celestial points, indicated observation points or reference markers for navigation. The placement of stars and constellations, subtly incorporated into the map's margins, reflected a sophisticated understanding of astronomy. By aligning the map with the night sky, the explorer could confirm positions and anticipate seasonal changes, a technique far beyond the capabilities of most European navigators of the period. The Jesuit also began to notice patterns of human habitation that aligned with the map's symbols. Ruins of settlements appeared where the map indicated, often accompanied by stone structures arranged in geometric formations, unusual for the region. In some cases, small caches of artifacts, ceramic vessels, tools, or ritual objects suggested that these sites had once been centers of knowledge or spiritual practice. These locations were never densely populated, and yet they seemed to function as nodes in a larger network, echoing the Templar strategy of hidden sanctuaries in Europe. The lost map, therefore, acted not only as a guide to cities or treasures, but as a key to understanding the cultural landscape the Templars had studied and protected. The journey also revealed the human dimension of the Templars' foresight. Local oral traditions spoke of visitors who arrived from distant lands, teaching agricultural techniques, astronomy, and craftsmanship. They were described as mysterious, pale, and disciplined figures who respected the natural world and its rhythms. These stories, passed down for generations, aligned remarkably with the locations indicated on the map. The explorer began to sense that the Templars' mission had not been conquest but transmission. The careful transfer of knowledge across continents and generations, safeguarded against the ignorance or ambition of those unprepared for it. Along the route, the Jesuit encountered natural markers that corresponded with the map's encoded instructions. A river bend forming a near-perfect circle, a cluster of stones arranged in geometric order, or a hill aligned with the rising sun on the solstice. These features acted as both confirmation and warning. The Templars had designed the path so that misinterpretation could lead the untrained traveler astray, potentially into dangerous terrain or dead ends. Knowledge, the map seemed to insist, was not freely given. It had to be earned through observation, patience, and intellect. Perhaps the most extraordinary revelation came when the explorer noticed alignments that suggested a network extending beyond the immediate region. Certain sites seemed connected not only by paths on the ground but also by astronomical lines. Long distances across deserts, rivers, and mountains marked by positions of stars at specific times. This implied that the Templars had not only mapped the land but synchronized their route with celestial cycles, creating a system of markers that functioned across space and time. To follow the path correctly required understanding both terrain and sky, a skill requiring discipline, study, and an appreciation for the subtle interplay between nature and knowledge. Through these observations, the Jesuit realized that the map represented more than navigation. It was a philosophy of exploration and understanding. The journey itself was a test of perception, endurance, and comprehension, reflecting the Templars' belief that true knowledge required more than observation of mere physical reality. It demanded integration of intelligence, ethics, and intuition. Each step along the route was a lesson in discernment, a calibration of mind and body, and a reaffirmation of the Order's enduring mission: to preserve wisdom, reveal it only to the worthy, and safeguard the delicate balance between human curiosity and responsibility. By the time the explorer completed his first circuit of the mapped route, he understood that the lost map was not simply a guide to hidden cities or treasure. It was a framework for engagement with the world itself. It demonstrated a worldview in which geography, astronomy, human settlement, and morality were intertwined, creating a network of knowledge that stretched from medieval Europe to the unexplored lands of the New World. Each discovery, each confirmed alignment, reinforced the realization that the Templars had operated with extraordinary foresight, preserving insights that, if misused, could have reshaped societies or provoked conflict. And so, the explorer moved forward with a profound sense of responsibility. He knew that he was not merely uncovering hidden locations. He was tracing the path of a centuries-old intelligence network, following in the footsteps of men whose vision transcended time. The lost map had revealed its first lessons: the power of observation, the discipline of secrecy, and the subtle art of guiding knowledge across generations. These insights would prepare him and any who followed for the ultimate discovery: the 7 golden cities themselves, and the deeper truths they guarded about human ambition, faith, and the preservation of wisdom across continents and centuries. As the Jesuit explorer pressed further along the hidden route suggested by the lost map, he began to sense that the journey was not merely a physical quest but a confrontation with time itself. Every marker he encountered, every alignment he confirmed, was evidence of a meticulous plan laid centuries before, by hands long vanished yet whose vision still guided the present. The Templars had not acted impulsively. Their routes, symbols, and sanctuaries were designed to endure generations of neglect, war, and natural decay. Each element was a deliberate choice, a signal left for those capable of understanding, ensuring that the knowledge they safeguarded would survive long after their disappearance. In one particularly arid region, the explorer discovered a series of stone formations that initially appeared random: small cairns, mounds, and weathered slabs scattered across the desert floor. But careful measurement revealed a startling precision. The stones formed lines and angles corresponding to solar events, lunar phases, and certain star positions. The Jesuit realized that the Templars had effectively created an astronomical map embedded in the terrain itself, one that could be read as both a guide for travel and a chronometer for timing seasonal events. The intersection of celestial and terrestrial markers was astonishing, demonstrating that the Templars had mastered not only geography but the rhythms of the heavens. Beyond these natural and man-made markers, the explorer found traces of previous travelers, small signs left by those who had sought the cities before him. Faint footprints, discarded tools, and remnants of temporary shelters indicated that others had followed the path, though none had fully succeeded. Some had likely perished, overwhelmed by the harsh terrain or by misreading the map's subtleties. This sobering realization reinforced the idea that the journey demanded more than endurance. It required intelligence, observation, and moral clarity. The Templars had encoded the route in a way that would reward only those prepared in body, mind, and spirit, a test that had persisted across centuries. The interplay between mythology and reality became increasingly evident as the explorer traced the path of the lost map. Local legends of mysterious visitors, once dismissed as fanciful tales, now appeared to intersect with the physical evidence. Villagers described pale men traveling with unusual precision, teaching advanced knowledge, and leaving markers in the land. Archaeological remnants, such as unusual stonework or alignments of ceremonial sites, matched patterns depicted in the map. Slowly, the Jesuit began to perceive that the Templars' reach into the New World may have been deliberate and strategic, an effort to establish a network of knowledge and influence that transcended the European continent. In particular, the explorer noticed recurring symbols etched into rocks, walls, and monuments. Small crosses, circles, and triangles that mirrored those on the map. These were not random graffiti. They were consistent, meaningful markers. Some indicated directions, others warning signs, and still others pointed to hidden caches or entrances to subterranean chambers. The realization dawned that the Templars had constructed a multi-layered communication system, a hybrid of map, code, and environmental signals designed to convey precise instructions to the prepared observer. The lost map was thus only one part of a larger network, a key to unlock messages distributed across the landscape, some visible, some intentionally concealed. One of the most striking discoveries occurred when the explorer arrived at a plateau aligned with the rising sun at the summer solstice. A stone formation there precisely corresponded to a constellation depicted on the map's margin. The alignment was so perfect that it seemed almost intentional, as though the Templars had selected the site specifically to encode astronomical knowledge. The explorer understood that such alignments served multiple purposes. They marked locations, preserved knowledge of celestial cycles, and reinforced the sacred nature of the path. The Templars' meticulous planning suggested a worldview in which human activity, geography, and the cosmos were inseparable, a philosophy that the map itself subtly transmitted to those capable of decoding it. The Jesuit also began to recognize the ethical dimension encoded in the journey. Some paths led to sustenance, water sources, and shelter, while others were intentionally misleading, designed to test discernment and moral judgment. The journey was not merely about reaching the 7 golden cities but about understanding responsibility, who could be trusted with knowledge, who would respect it, and who might exploit it for selfish purposes. In this way, the Templars' maps served not only as guides but as moral instruments, teaching lessons in judgment, patience, and foresight. As the explorer continued, he realized that the lost map was a testament to the extraordinary foresight of the Templars. They had created a system that transcended time, embedding instructions, warnings, and insights in both parchment and landscape. The path to the 7 golden cities was therefore as much a journey of character and intellect as it was a physical expedition. Each marker, alignment, and symbol was a puzzle, demanding observation, reasoning, and humility. The Templars' genius lay not merely in their knowledge of the world, but in their understanding of the human spirit, ensuring that only those truly prepared could follow the route successfully. By the time he had covered a significant portion of the route, the Jesuit understood that he was witnessing the culmination of centuries of careful planning. The lost map was not merely a document. It was a living record of strategy, philosophy, and vision, connecting Europe and the New World through a network of knowledge, morality, and hidden guidance. Every step along the path confirmed that the Templars had anticipated centuries of change, crafting a legacy designed to endure. The journey, the map, and the markers together formed a bridge across time, linking past ambition with present discovery, and ultimately pointing toward the 7 golden cities, whose secrets were waiting to reveal themselves to the worthy traveler. As the Jesuit explorer ventured further into the heart of the route marked by the lost map, he began to perceive a remarkable pattern emerging from the wilderness, a network of hidden sanctuaries, refuges, and observation points that suggested far more than mere navigation. Each site seemed intentionally placed to serve multiple purposes: shelter for travelers, storage for knowledge or artifacts, and markers for those attuned to the Templar codes. Some were cleverly disguised within natural formations, caves tucked behind waterfalls, rock ledges carved into benches, or hollows beneath boulders that shielded inscriptions from wind and rain. Others were subtly integrated into abandoned settlements, where walls, doorways, and foundations aligned precisely with the symbols depicted on the map. The explorer realized that these sites were not randomly scattered. They followed a logic that combined geometry, astronomy, and geography. Paths connected these sanctuaries along lines that corresponded with specific star positions at key times of the year. Certain caves and rock formations aligned with solstices or equinoxes, suggesting a method of timing and measurement that transcended simple terrestrial navigation. In effect, the Templars had created an encoded network across the landscape, a system that could only be interpreted by those trained to read both the map and the environment it described. The landscape itself became a living document, one where terrain, sky, and structure conveyed knowledge across centuries. At one particularly remote site, the explorer discovered a hidden chamber partially collapsed under centuries of sediment. Within it were fragments of manuscripts, tools, and symbols etched into the stone. These remnants seemed to be a record of the Order's travels in the New World, a combination of observations about the environment, astronomical calculations, and encoded instructions for future travelers. Some markings mirrored those on the lost map, confirming that the map's guidance extended beyond simple navigation and into an intricate system of knowledge preservation. The Jesuit began to understand that each site functioned as a node in a larger network, a way station not just for physical travel, but for intellectual and spiritual continuity. The placement of these sanctuaries also suggested a sophisticated understanding of human behavior and environmental strategy. Some sites were located near natural resources, freshwater springs, fruit-bearing trees, or animal migration paths, ensuring sustenance for travelers who followed the route. Others were strategically hidden near seemingly inaccessible regions, providing security against potential looters or intruders. The explorer noted how these locations were interconnected, forming circuits that allowed a traveler to move from one site to another with minimal risk while following the precise instructions encoded in the lost map. The Templars had not merely hidden knowledge. They had protected it in a way that integrated survival, strategy, and secrecy. The Jesuit also encountered symbolic markers that served as moral and intellectual checkpoints. Certain inscriptions appeared to test the observer's discernment. Subtle deviations in line patterns, the orientation of stones, or the placement of symbols challenged the traveler to interpret meaning correctly. Misreading these signs could lead to dead ends or peril, reflecting the Templars' insistence that wisdom be paired with vigilance, patience, and integrity. The path to knowledge, the map suggested, was as much about character as it was about intelligence or courage. As he continued to follow the route, the explorer noticed clusters of markers that seemed to correlate with indigenous settlements. There was evidence of interaction, small artifacts, shared symbols, or remnants of trade, suggesting that the Templars had not arrived merely as passive observers, but as participants in cultural exchange. They may have transmitted knowledge in metallurgy, astronomy, agriculture, and mathematics, leaving traces that persisted in local traditions long after their departure. These interactions reinforced the idea that the Templars' presence in the New World was strategic and purposeful. They were safeguarding not only their own knowledge but also fragments of global wisdom that might otherwise have been lost. One of the most profound discoveries occurred when the Jesuit identified a series of 7 sanctuaries aligned in a pattern that corresponded with the mythic 7 golden cities. Each location was marked with precise geometrical relationships and celestial alignments, indicating a symbolic as well as practical connection. These sites were more than physical waypoints. They were part of a larger philosophical and spiritual framework designed to guide, educate, and test those who followed the path. In essence, the Templars had created a living curriculum embedded into the New World landscape, one that demanded observation, interpretation, and ethical awareness from those who sought its secrets. Through these discoveries, the explorer realized that the lost map and the network of sanctuaries represented a monumental achievement of foresight and intelligence. The Templars had combined cartography, astronomy, and moral instruction into a single integrated system, ensuring that their knowledge could survive centuries of upheaval. Each stone, each alignment, and each hidden chamber was a testament to a civilization of thought and strategy that transcended its medieval origins. By the end of this phase of exploration, the Jesuit had come to understand the depth and complexity of the Templars' vision. The sanctuaries and markers were not merely historical curiosities. They were active conduits of knowledge, carefully calibrated to guide, challenge, and protect. To follow their path was to engage in a dialogue with the past, to test one's intellect, judgment, and perseverance against the standards set by an order whose ambition and wisdom extended far beyond the temporal world. The journey toward the 7 golden cities was thus transformed from a mere search for legend into a profound exploration of human potential, strategy, and the enduring power of carefully preserved knowledge. As the Jesuit explorer pressed onward along the path revealed by the lost map, he began to uncover evidence of something far greater than simple geographic markers or hidden sanctuaries. The Templars had left traces not only of travel and observation but of profound intellectual and spiritual ambition. Everywhere he looked, the landscape itself seemed to have been curated, with natural formations, ruins, and subtle alignments forming a vast, interconnected network. Mountains, rivers, and valleys were no longer merely physical obstacles. They were part of an intentional design, guiding the traveler toward understanding and insight as much as toward any physical destination. In one particularly remote canyon, the Jesuit discovered a formation of stones arranged in a pattern that mirrored a constellation he had memorized from the map. The placement was deliberate, precise, and unmistakable. It was as though the Templars had embedded a cosmic key within the terrain, allowing those with knowledge of the heavens to read the land with an almost prophetic clarity. He realized that the Templars' approach to exploration had been multidimensional. Geography, astronomy, and symbolism intertwined to create a path that taught observation, logic, and perception. These markers were both practical and philosophical, instructing travelers on how to see the world not only as it appeared, but as it functioned in harmony with the cosmos. This realization deepened as the explorer encountered inscriptions and carvings at several waypoints. These were not mere graffiti or decorative flourishes. They contained geometric patterns, coded sequences of letters and numbers, and abstract symbols that seemed to encode information about distance, orientation, and timing. Some carvings referenced celestial events such as solstices and equinoxes, while others appeared to mark hidden resources, water sources, safe passageways, or hidden caches of tools and supplies. The lost map, he realized, was only one layer of the Templars' intelligence network. The landscape itself was a living document, designed to communicate with those capable of reading its subtle language. The Jesuit also began to detect moral and philosophical lessons embedded in the route. Certain paths were intentionally challenging, requiring endurance, careful decision-making, and attention to detail. Others presented opportunities for reflection. The serene alignment of a mountain pass with the sunrise, the pattern of a river winding through the valley, or the precision of a stone circle aligned with the stars. The Templars, it seemed, had understood that knowledge was inseparable from discipline, virtue, and character. The journey was not simply about reaching the 7 golden cities. It was about proving oneself worthy of understanding the wisdom they guarded. Local oral traditions reinforced this understanding. In several villages along the route, the Jesuit heard stories of pale, disciplined travelers who arrived long before Spanish colonists, teaching skills in navigation, astronomy, and metallurgy, and leaving behind markers for others to find. These accounts, once dismissed as legend, now aligned with the physical evidence. Stone formations, hidden chambers, and ruins marked with symbols identical to those depicted on the map. The Templars' influence, he realized, had not been limited to Europe or the Mediterranean. It had extended into the Americas, leaving traces that persisted long after their departure. At one remarkable site, the Jesuit uncovered a chamber hidden beneath a rocky overhang, its entrance concealed by centuries of sand and vegetation. Inside, he found artifacts carefully arranged in geometric patterns. Small ceramic vessels, tools, and fragments of parchment with symbols matching those on the lost map. The chamber appeared to have been a repository of knowledge, a hidden library of sorts, preserving materials too valuable or dangerous to be exposed to the uninitiated. Its existence confirmed that the Templars had not only mapped routes but actively safeguarded information, establishing a network of sanctuaries to ensure its survival. The explorer also noted the extraordinary precision with which the Templars had integrated natural geography into their system. Rivers were traced with astonishing accuracy, guiding travelers along safe courses while avoiding hazards. Mountains were used as natural markers, their shapes and orientations encoded in the map and in physical inscriptions. Even the wind and sun were accounted for, as certain waypoints relied on light angles or prevailing conditions to confirm the path. It was clear that the Templars had not relied solely on human observation. They had harmonized their routes with the environment itself, creating a system that was as resilient as it was ingenious. Through these discoveries, the Jesuit came to understand the magnitude of the Templars' vision. The lost map was not merely a guide to cities or treasures. It was a philosophical framework for engaging with the world. It taught observation, ethical judgment, and intellectual discipline, embedding centuries of wisdom into a journey that traversed deserts, rivers, mountains, and forests. The Templars had anticipated the passage of time, ensuring that only those capable of understanding the interplay of geography, symbolism, and morality could complete the path successfully. By the end of this stage of exploration, the Jesuit recognized that the journey was revealing not just hidden locations, but the very mindset of the order that had created the map. The Templars had designed a system that combined science, art, and ethics into a single coherent path, a network that preserved knowledge, tested character, and guided the worthy toward understanding. Each waypoint confirmed the careful planning, ingenuity, and moral consideration that had gone into their creation, offering a glimpse into an order whose influence stretched far beyond medieval Europe and into the uncharted territories of the New World. The lost map, and the network of sites it revealed, was thus both a practical guide and a living testament to human foresight, discipline, and vision. It demonstrated that the Templars' legacy was not limited to war or religion, but extended into exploration, knowledge preservation, and ethical instruction. And as the Jesuit traced these hidden paths, he realized that he was following the footsteps of men whose ambition, intellect, and secrecy had created a bridge across continents and centuries, leading inexorably toward the legendary 7 golden cities and the wisdom they were designed to safeguard. As the Jesuit explorer moved deeper into the route outlined by the lost map, he began to sense a profound connection between the physical landscape and the Templars' encoded knowledge. Every valley, canyon, and river bend seemed deliberately chosen, not only for strategic or survival purposes, but as a lesson in observation, geometry, and celestial alignment. The map's lines were no longer just lines. They were pathways through space, time, and human understanding. Each step forward felt like following an invisible hand stretching across centuries, guiding him toward destinations that were as much about insight as they were about legend. In one particularly arid stretch, the explorer discovered a hidden ravine whose contours matched a triangular symbol on the map. At first glance, it appeared simply as a natural formation, shaped by wind and water over millennia. But careful observation revealed subtle markers, small carved stones placed along the edges, their positions correlating precisely with angles depicted in the map. Some stones aligned with the sunrise on the summer solstice, while others corresponded to the position of a prominent constellation at night. The realization struck him. The Templars had created an integrated system, using the land itself as a map, a chronometer, and a lesson in both geometry and astronomy. The Jesuit also encountered inscriptions etched into rock faces, nearly invisible beneath centuries of weathering. These carvings included geometric patterns, sequences of dots and lines, and cryptic symbols that mirrored those on the lost map. Some markings appeared to indicate hidden water sources or safe passage through otherwise treacherous terrain. Others suggested more abstract meanings, references to philosophical or spiritual principles that the Templars had embedded within the landscape. The explorer understood that the path was as much about cultivating discernment, patience, and awareness as it was about reaching a physical destination. Misreading a symbol or ignoring a subtle environmental clue could lead a traveler off course, perhaps permanently. Local oral traditions began to resonate with these discoveries. Villagers told stories of pale, disciplined strangers arriving centuries ago, teaching navigation, agriculture, and astronomy. They left markers that were visible only to those who knew what to look for, integrating their knowledge into the natural environment without altering it destructively. The Jesuit realized that these accounts were not mere legend. They were testimonies to a hidden legacy of cultural exchange, a Templar presence that had adapted to the New World's terrain and preserved knowledge for generations to come. One of the most remarkable sights he encountered was a natural amphitheater, where stones were arranged in concentric circles and aligned with the cardinal points. The arrangement was precise enough to function as an observatory, allowing the observer to track the movement of stars and planets. The Jesuit recognized that the Templars had embedded astronomical knowledge directly into the landscape, creating a system that combined practical navigation with a philosophical understanding of the cosmos. The map, in turn, served as a key, guiding travelers to these observation points and enabling them to interpret the signs correctly. The interplay between terrain, celestial markers, and encoded symbols became increasingly evident. Rivers functioned as guides, valleys as lesson spaces, and stone formations as both warnings and confirmations. The Templars had designed a journey that demanded engagement on multiple levels: physical, intellectual, and moral. To traverse the path successfully required patience, keen observation, and an understanding of the principles the Order had sought to preserve. The Lost Map was not merely a route. It was a curriculum, a means of transmitting centuries of knowledge through experience rather than written instruction alone. The explorer also encountered evidence of concealed shelters along the route. Small, hidden chambers carved into cliffs, rock overhangs, or beneath naturally formed ledges. These spaces contained remnants of previous travelers, tools, vessels, and fragments of manuscripts bearing the same symbols as those on the map. They were clearly intended as way stations, preserving knowledge, and providing refuge for those following the path. It became evident that the Templars had designed a resilient network, one that allowed for the survival and continuation of their mission despite the passage of centuries and the challenges of the environment. Perhaps most striking was the moral dimension embedded in these waypoints. Certain locations presented choices, guiding the traveler along paths of reflection and ethical decision-making. The Templars seemed to have understood that knowledge without discipline or virtue was dangerous, and they constructed the route in such a way that only those with patience, discernment, and integrity could proceed successfully. The Lost Map, therefore, was not just a physical guide. It was an instrument of moral education, testing the character of those who sought to follow it. By the time the Jesuit completed this segment of the journey, he had come to a profound realization. The Templars had created a multidimensional system that transcended ordinary maps. The Lost Map, the hidden sanctuaries, the astronomical alignments, and the symbolic markers together formed an integrated framework for understanding the world, human behavior, and cosmic order. Each discovery reinforced the sense that the 7 golden cities were more than myth. They were a culmination of a carefully planned journey, designed to reveal insight, knowledge, and wisdom to those prepared to receive it. This phase of exploration transformed the Jesuits' understanding of the Templars. They were not merely warriors, monks, or navigators. They were architects of knowledge, planners of a journey that bridged continents and centuries. Their work preserved lessons in observation, ethics, survival, and astronomy, encoded in both maps and landscape. And as the explorer traced the lines of the Lost Map through valleys, rivers, and hidden chambers, he began to glimpse the magnitude of their vision. A path that led not only to the legendary 7 golden cities, but to an enduring understanding of human potential, the preservation of knowledge, and the art of secrecy perfected across generations. As the Jesuit explorer advanced further along the path indicated by the Lost Map, the journey began to reveal layers of Templar design that extended far beyond mere geography or hidden sanctuaries. He began to notice that the map and its corresponding markers formed a deliberate network of observation points, vantage positions, and strategic way stations, each carefully placed to serve multiple purposes. Some sites provided safe shelter, others offered critical information, whether through inscriptions, stone alignments, or subtle natural cues. Each waypoint carried a dual function: practical guidance for survival and encoded lessons in logic, ethics, and astronomy. It became clear that the Templars had created a multidimensional system where every choice mattered, and every observation could lead to insight or danger. In one desolate stretch of high desert, the Jesuit came upon a series of stones arranged in a pattern that mirrored a constellation carefully noted in the Lost Map. Initially, the arrangement appeared coincidental, but precise measurements confirmed its intentionality. The stones were aligned with sunrise on the winter solstice, the shadow of one stone pointing directly toward a small, hidden cavity containing carved symbols. These markings corresponded to notations on the map that suggested a path to water and shelter several miles ahead. It was a sophisticated method of guiding travelers, combining environmental awareness, astronomy, and coded knowledge in a way that required both intellect and patience to interpret. The Templars had transformed the natural world into a living map, one whose instructions could survive centuries if approached with care and understanding. Beyond practical markers, the Jesuit discovered that certain locations were imbued with philosophical and moral dimensions. Some paths were deliberately challenging, forcing him to navigate treacherous terrain, decipher subtle alignments, or interpret complex geometric inscriptions. Others required restraint and observation, teaching patience, attention to detail, and discernment. The Templars had long recognized that knowledge was only valuable in the hands of the prepared. By embedding moral and intellectual tests within the physical journey, they ensured that only travelers of character and diligence could successfully navigate the route. The map was more than a guide. It was an instrument of ethical cultivation. Local oral traditions lent further weight to this understanding. In villages along the route, he heard stories of mysterious travelers from distant lands who arrived centuries ago, teaching the principles of navigation, astronomy, and practical skills while leaving subtle markers for others. These stories, once dismissed as legend, now aligned with physical evidence. Stone arrangements, hidden chambers, and ruins precisely corresponding to symbols depicted on the lost map. It became clear that the Templars had not only left knowledge behind, they had embedded it in the landscape itself, creating a long-lasting framework for education and discovery that transcended generations. The explorer also began to notice an extraordinary precision in the Templars' integration of natural geography. River bends, mountain ridges, and plains were all utilized to guide travelers along the correct path, while potential hazards were avoided through careful placement of markers. Some markers were designed to be visible only under specific lighting conditions or at certain times of the year, making observation an essential skill for navigation. In this way, the journey became a sophisticated interplay between the environment and encoded intelligence, with the natural world serving as both guide and teacher. One particularly striking discovery occurred in a secluded valley where a natural rock formation had been augmented by carved stones forming geometric shapes. Alignments corresponded to key celestial events, equinoxes, solstices, and notable star positions. By tracking these celestial markers, the Jesuit could confirm the next stages of his route. He realized that the Templars had constructed a system that merged terrestrial and astronomical knowledge, creating a navigation method resilient to time and political change. These markers allowed travelers to orient themselves even in an unfamiliar landscape, highlighting the Templars' advanced understanding of both the earth and the heavens. The Jesuit also encountered hidden chambers designed as way stations. These small shelters, often concealed beneath rock ledges or within cave systems, contained remnants of previous travelers, tools, small artifacts, and even fragments of manuscripts that mirrored the symbols on the lost map. They served as proof that others had undertaken the journey before him and as a continuation of the Templars' careful stewardship of knowledge. By integrating these physical refuges with encoded instructions and environmental cues, the Templars had created a system that could endure for centuries, preserving both practical guidance and philosophical insight. As he progressed, the Jesuit recognized the extraordinary foresight required to construct such a network. The Templars had considered environmental hazards, seasonal changes, and even the moral and intellectual readiness of those who would follow. Every stone, inscription, and alignment was intentional, forming a complex system of knowledge transmission that demanded intelligence, observation, and ethical discernment. The lost map was not simply a tool for locating hidden cities. It was a curriculum in survival, philosophy, and the art of interpretation, designed to cultivate wisdom across generations. By the end of this segment of exploration, the Jesuit understood that the Templars had created a multidimensional framework that transcended mere exploration. The lost map, combined with the network of sanctuaries, astronomical alignments, and encoded symbols, constituted an enduring system for guiding, testing, and educating those who followed. Each discovery reinforced the idea that the 7 golden cities were more than material destinations. They represented the culmination of a carefully designed intellectual and ethical journey, one that linked geography, astronomy, morality, and human character into a single coherent path. Through these revelations, the Jesuit grasped the magnitude of the Templars' ambition. They had created not just a route or a map, but a living, enduring framework for knowledge that spanned continents and centuries. It was a testament to their vision, discipline, and foresight, a system designed to challenge, instruct, and ultimately reward those capable of understanding the depth and subtlety of their legacy. And as he continued along the lost map's path, the Jesuit could feel himself becoming part of this continuum, tracing the footsteps of an order whose intellect and secrecy had left a mark that reached far beyond medieval Europe, extending into the heart of the New World and toward the legendary 7 Golden Cities themselves. As the Jesuit explorer pressed onward, it became increasingly clear that the lost map was more than a tool for navigation. It was a profound instrument of layered intelligence, blending geography, astronomy, ethics, and strategic foresight into a single coherent system. Each step along the route revealed new dimensions of the Templars' vision, demonstrating that their mission extended beyond the mere discovery of the 7 Golden Cities. The map, the hidden waypoints, and the encoded markers all functioned together as a multidimensional network, designed not only to guide travelers but also to test their character, judgment, and patience. It was an education in observation, resilience, and discernment, embedded within the very contours of the New World landscape. In one particularly challenging stretch, the Jesuit came upon a series of rock formations that at first appeared chaotic, eroded by centuries of wind and rain. Yet as he studied them carefully, he began to recognize a deliberate geometric pattern: triangles, circles, and intersecting lines that matched the symbols on the lost map. These formations were not mere markers. They were active instruments of guidance, signaling the correct path while simultaneously alerting the traveler to potential hazards. Misreading the alignment could lead to dangerous terrain or false trails, reinforcing the Templars' insistence that knowledge be paired with discernment. The landscape itself had become a living puzzle, a test of intelligence and ethical responsibility. The Jesuit also noticed subtle astronomical alignments that reinforced the precision of the route. Certain stones and formations were positioned to cast shadows at specific times of day or year, indicating the direction of hidden paths or the timing for certain maneuvers. At one waypoint, a crescent-shaped rock projected a shadow directly onto a carved stone as the sun reached its zenith, revealing a symbol that pointed the explorer toward a hidden canyon. These markers demonstrated a remarkable understanding of both terrestrial and celestial mechanics, suggesting that the Templars had integrated practical navigation with a sophisticated comprehension of astronomy. It was a system designed to endure time, teaching those who could read it to harmonize human observation with natural cycles. The Jesuit also began to see the ethical dimension encoded into the journey. Some paths appeared deceptively simple but required careful reasoning or restraint. Others offered sustenance and shelter only to those who demonstrated patience and vigilance. The Templars had deliberately constructed a layered network of challenges, ensuring that only travelers with discipline, insight, and moral integrity could progress. Knowledge was never freely given. It had to be earned through observation, reflection, and ethical judgment. The lost map was as much a moral guide as a geographic one, cultivating not just skill, but character. Local traditions and oral histories began to align with the physical markers. Villagers spoke of pale, disciplined strangers who had traversed these regions centuries before, teaching skills in navigation, astronomy, and construction while leaving behind subtle signs for others to follow. These stories, often dismissed as folklore, suddenly gained credibility when compared with the stone alignments, hidden chambers, and celestial markers the Jesuit encountered. The Templars' presence in the New World was not a fleeting mission but a carefully orchestrated program of knowledge preservation and cultural transmission. They had not only charted paths but had embedded their wisdom into the land itself, creating a resilient, enduring network. In one extraordinary discovery, the explorer found a hidden chamber within a cliffside, its entrance concealed by overgrown vegetation. Inside, he uncovered artifacts arranged with meticulous care. Stone tools, ceramic fragments, and parchment remnants inscribed with symbols matching those on the lost map. These were not random deposits. They were deliberately placed as repositories of knowledge, intended to preserve information and guide future travelers. The chamber also suggested a lineage of caretakers, men and women who had continued the Templars' mission across generations, ensuring that their instructions, codes, and wisdom survived centuries of upheaval. The Jesuit recognized that the Templars' integration of landscape, astronomy, and encoded knowledge created a system that was both practical and philosophical. Each waypoint conveyed instructions about survival, observation, and navigation while simultaneously teaching lessons in discernment, patience, and ethical responsibility. It was a comprehensive method of knowledge transmission, combining empirical observation with moral instruction. The 7 golden cities were not merely a physical destination. They were the culmination of a journey that tested mind, body, and spirit, rewarding those capable of understanding the full depth of the Templars' design. By the time the explorer had traced this portion of the route, he understood the magnitude of what he was following. The lost map, the hidden chambers, and the celestial alignments were part of an enduring, multidimensional framework, a bridge across centuries that connected Europe to the New World. The Templars' ambition was revealed not only in their knowledge of geography and astronomy, but in their understanding of human character and the necessity of guiding wisdom responsibly. Their vision transcended time, creating a journey that demanded intelligence, discipline, and ethical awareness, and that ultimately pointed toward the 7 golden cities, whose secrets were carefully safeguarded for those capable of truly perceiving them. This segment of the journey impressed upon the Jesuit the extraordinary foresight and discipline of the Templars. They had constructed a network that harmonized human ingenuity with the natural world, embedding layers of meaning, challenge, and guidance into the terrain itself. The lost map was the key, but understanding it required engagement with every dimension of the system: physical, intellectual, moral, and spiritual. As he continued forward, the explorer began to feel the weight of history, following the footsteps of men whose vision, secrecy, and wisdom had spanned continents and centuries, leading inexorably toward the legendary 7 golden cities and the knowledge they were meant to protect. As the Jesuit explorer continued to trace the path laid out by the lost map, he began to sense that the journey was no longer merely about discovering hidden cities or material treasure. Each waypoint, marker, and hidden sanctuary revealed a deeper philosophy embedded by the Templars, one that merged observation, strategy, and moral discipline into a seamless framework. The landscape itself seemed to act as a teacher, offering subtle lessons through its rivers, cliffs, and valleys. The Templars had designed the path not just to guide a traveler physically, but to cultivate the mind, the senses, and the judgment of anyone capable of interpreting their intricate system. One particularly striking discovery occurred in a high plateau, where the Jesuit noticed a ring of stones carefully arranged in a pattern reminiscent of celestial orbits. Shadows cast by the stones at sunrise and sunset aligned perfectly with carvings etched into the rock, indicating both direction and timing for future steps. It became clear that the Templars had integrated astronomical observation into their navigation, creating a dual system where both the terrain and the heavens conveyed guidance. By decoding these alignments, travelers could confirm their position, anticipate seasonal variations, and predict celestial events crucial for successful navigation. The map was not just a static guide. It was a living instrument, interacting with the environment and the sky to reveal its secrets. Beyond practical navigation, the Jesuit observed subtle symbols and inscriptions embedded in rocks, cliffs, and ruins along the route. Geometric patterns, sequences of lines, and cryptic symbols appeared to encode multiple layers of information. Some indicated hidden resources such as water sources, safe passages, or concealed chambers, while others carried philosophical or ethical lessons. The Templars, he realized, had not only preserved knowledge for survival, but had embedded principles of discernment, patience, and moral responsibility into the path itself. Misinterpreting a symbol or overlooking a marker could lead to a dead end, or worse, danger, demonstrating the Templars' insistence that wisdom be paired with vigilance and integrity. Local oral traditions began to converge with these physical markers. Villagers recounted tales of mysterious pale travelers arriving centuries earlier, teaching skills in astronomy, navigation, and agriculture, leaving behind subtle markers for others to follow. Previously dismissed as legend, these stories now held tangible truth when juxtaposed with stone alignments, hidden chambers, and the map itself. The Templars had intentionally woven their legacy into the cultural memory of the land, creating a network of knowledge that survived both time and conquest. The Jesuit also discovered that the path included hidden shelters and small sanctuaries, often concealed beneath rock overhangs or inside natural caves. These spaces contained artifacts carefully arranged with precision: ceramic fragments, tools, and parchment remnants bearing symbols matching those on the lost map. These were not haphazard deposits. They were repositories, curated for the preservation of knowledge and guidance of future travelers. The existence of these shelters suggested a chain of custodians who had maintained the Templars' mission across generations, ensuring that the path and its encoded wisdom would endure for centuries. Astronomical and geographical integration became even more apparent as he progressed. Rivers, mountains, and valleys were not simply obstacles or resources. They were teaching instruments, each carefully considered in the Templars' system. Waterways acted as guides, mountains as natural beacons, and stone formations as verification points. Some markers were designed to be visible only under specific conditions, at certain times of the day, during particular seasons, or under precise celestial alignments, requiring the traveler to synchronize observation with interpretation. It was a remarkable demonstration of foresight, ensuring that the system could guide the prepared even amidst centuries of environmental change. The ethical dimension of the journey continued to manifest. Certain paths tested patience, attention, and intelligence, while others offered sustenance or confirmation only to those who carefully interpreted previous markers. The lost map was thus not merely a practical guide. It was a moral framework, instilling discipline, focus, and integrity. The Templars understood that knowledge wielded without virtue could be destructive, and their system ensured that only the capable and ethical would proceed successfully. By the end of this segment of exploration, the Jesuit realized that the Templars' design extended beyond physical and intellectual instruction. The journey was an exercise in harmony with the natural world, aligning human perception with the rhythms of both earth and sky. The lost map, hidden chambers, celestial alignments, and encoded symbols together formed a multidimensional curriculum, testing, teaching, and guiding in equal measure. It was a system that survived centuries of upheaval, a testament to the Templars' vision, discipline, and foresight. Through these discoveries, he understood that the 7 golden cities represented far more than myth or material reward. They were the culmination of a carefully orchestrated journey, one designed to cultivate knowledge, ethical judgment, and the understanding of natural and cosmic order. The Templars had left a legacy that transcended time, geography, and culture. A system that rewarded careful observation, intellectual rigor, and moral insight. Following this path, the Jesuit felt himself part of a continuum, walking in the footsteps of an order whose wisdom, secrecy, and ambition had created a bridge across continents and centuries, guiding the worthy toward enlightenment and the legendary 7 golden cities. As the Jesuit explorer ventured deeper into the uncharted terrain mapped by the lost map, he began to sense the full magnitude of the Templars' ambition. What had initially appeared to be a simple guide to hidden cities revealed itself to be an intricate web of knowledge, ethics, and observation woven into the very fabric of the New World. Every river bend, rocky ridge, and forested canyon seemed deliberately selected, designed to test perception, patience, and intelligence. The Templars had constructed a journey that required the traveler to engage with the landscape, the stars, and their own judgment simultaneously. This was not merely a route to treasure. It was a rigorous, centuries-long exercise in understanding the interconnectedness of human effort, nature, and hidden wisdom. In one secluded valley, the Jesuit discovered a series of carved stone markers arranged in a complex geometric formation. At first, the patterns seemed random, weathered by centuries of wind and rain, but closer examination revealed their precision. Circles, triangles, and intersecting lines that mirrored symbols depicted on the lost map. Shadows cast by the stones at sunrise illuminated hidden carvings, offering precise instructions for direction and distance to the next waypoint. The explorer realized that the Templars had intentionally embedded lessons in observation and interpretation into the very environment, creating a system where physical travel became a test of intellectual and perceptual skill. Each correct reading of a symbol or shadow revealed more of the path, while errors could lead to confusion or danger. The Jesuit also noted the integration of celestial markers into the Templars' design. Certain stones, cliffs, and natural formations were aligned with key astronomical events, solstices, equinoxes, and the positions of prominent stars. At one waypoint, a crescent-shaped rock projected a shadow onto a hidden carving only at the precise moment the sun reached its zenith, revealing an encoded symbol pointing to a concealed chamber nearby. These celestial alignments reinforced the precision of the journey and demonstrated the Templars' extraordinary knowledge of astronomy. By combining terrestrial and celestial markers, they had created a system that was both practical and enduring, one that could survive centuries of environmental change and human neglect. Along the route, hidden sanctuaries became increasingly frequent. Many were tucked within cliffs, caves, or natural rock shelters, carefully concealed from casual observation. Inside, the Jesuit discovered artifacts arranged with meticulous care. Ceramic vessels, tools, and fragments of manuscripts bearing symbols identical to those on the lost map. These repositories were clearly intended for those capable of interpreting the encoded knowledge, providing guidance, shelter, and confirmation for travelers who successfully navigated the preceding markers. Each sanctuary functioned as a node in a larger network, linking practical survival with intellectual insight and ethical evaluation. Local legends began to resonate more strongly as the Jesuit progressed. Villagers spoke of pale, disciplined strangers who had appeared centuries earlier, imparting skills in astronomy, navigation, and craft while leaving subtle markers in the environment. Stories of these mysterious figures, long dismissed as folklore, were now validated by the alignment of physical evidence and the map's instructions. The Templars' presence in the New World was strategic and deliberate, a carefully orchestrated effort to safeguard knowledge, transmit skill, and ensure that only those capable of discerning their system could succeed. The explorer also began to recognize the moral dimension embedded in the journey. Certain routes were deliberately deceptive or challenging, testing patience, judgment, and ethical decision-making. Other paths provided sustenance, safety, or confirmation only to those who interpreted previous markers correctly. The Templars understood that knowledge without virtue could be misused, and the lost map acted as a filter, ensuring that only travelers of integrity and intellect could progress. The journey was therefore not only about reaching the 7 golden cities but about proving worthiness to engage with the wisdom they protected. By this stage of exploration, the Jesuit understood that the Templars had constructed a system of astonishing complexity. Geography, astronomy, moral instruction, and intellectual challenge were all integrated into a single multidimensional framework. Rivers were guides, mountains were beacons, stone alignments were teachers, and the stars themselves provided verification. The lost map was only one element of a vast, enduring design, linking centuries of foresight with the practical, moral, and philosophical guidance embedded in the New World landscape. Through these discoveries, he began to see the 7 golden cities not as mere material destinations, but as the culmination of a journey designed to cultivate perception, intellect, and ethical awareness. The Templars' ambition had transcended continents and centuries. They had created a living curriculum of survival, observation, and morality, preserved in the terrain, aligned with the cosmos, and encoded in symbols visible only to the worthy. Each waypoint was a step in both a physical and spiritual education, a lesson in the careful balance between knowledge, responsibility, and human potential. As the Jesuit pressed onward, he realized that he was tracing a path designed to endure time itself. The lost map, the sanctuaries, the celestial alignments, and the encoded markers together formed an interconnected network that transcended ordinary navigation. They were a testament to the Templars' genius, an enduring, multidimensional system of knowledge, morality, and strategy that guided travelers not only toward legendary cities but toward understanding, wisdom, and the discipline required to steward such secrets responsibly. And in walking this path, the Jesuit felt himself becoming part of a continuum, following footsteps that spanned centuries, continents, and the extraordinary vision of an order whose ambition and intellect had left a mark upon the world that even time could not erase. As the Jesuit explorer advanced further along the lost map's trail, the Templars' ingenuity revealed itself in increasingly profound ways. What had once seemed like simple geographic markers now emerged as part of an intricate system of knowledge and strategy. The landscape itself appeared meticulously curated, every canyon, ridge, and river bend functioning simultaneously as guidance, lesson, and test. The Templars had created more than a path to hidden cities. They had constructed a multidimensional curriculum that combined observation, morality, and survival skills, challenging those who followed to engage with the world on multiple levels. It became clear that every decision, every interpretation of a marker or shadow, carried consequences, both practical and ethical. In one rugged highland, the Jesuit discovered a series of stones arranged in precise geometric patterns, their positions corresponding to both the symbols on the lost map and celestial alignments. Triangles, circles, and intersecting lines etched into the rock created a system of guidance that required careful observation to decipher. Shadows cast at dawn and dusk revealed hidden carvings, each one providing crucial instructions for the next leg of the journey. The explorer realized that the Templars had embedded lessons in logic and perception directly into the terrain, transforming the act of travel into an intellectual and spiritual exercise. The map itself was just one layer of a system that demanded patience, intelligence, and ethical judgment. The Jesuit also noted the integration of celestial mechanics into the Templars' design. Certain stones, cliffs, and natural formations aligned with solstices, equinoxes, and specific star positions. At a remote canyon, a crescent-shaped rock cast a shadow onto a hidden inscription only at the exact moment the sun reached its zenith. This revealed a sequence of symbols indicating the direction and distance to a nearby concealed sanctuary. It became evident that the Templars had constructed a system in which the heavens themselves served as guides, ensuring the path remained accurate across centuries of environmental and political change. The journey required synchronization with nature, teaching travelers to interpret both terrestrial and celestial signs simultaneously. Hidden sanctuaries became increasingly frequent, often tucked beneath rock ledges, inside caves, or obscured by vegetation. Within these refuges, the Jesuit found artifacts arranged with meticulous care. Ceramic vessels, tools, and fragments of manuscripts bearing symbols identical to those on the lost map. These were clearly intended as repositories of knowledge and guidance, allowing travelers to rest, confirm their progress, and gain insight for the next stage. Each sanctuary acted as a node in a vast network, linking practical survival, intellectual rigor, and moral discernment. The Templars had built a system resilient enough to endure centuries, preserving both guidance and ethical instruction for those capable of understanding it. Local traditions provided further context. Villagers spoke of pale, disciplined strangers who arrived centuries earlier, teaching navigation, astronomy, and practical skills, leaving subtle signs for others to follow. While often dismissed as legend, these accounts aligned perfectly with physical evidence. Hidden chambers, celestial markers, and the inscriptions etched into rock and stone. It became clear that the Templars had carefully integrated their presence into both the environment and cultural memory, ensuring their network of knowledge would survive the passage of time and the upheavals of conquest. The explorer also recognized the ethical framework encoded into the journey. Certain paths tested patience, critical thinking, and moral judgment, while others provided sustenance or confirmation only to those who interpreted prior markers correctly. Knowledge without virtue, the Templars seemed to insist, was dangerous and incomplete. The lost map, therefore, acted as both a guide and a moral filter, allowing only those with intelligence, integrity, and careful observation to progress successfully. Each decision reinforced the importance of ethical awareness, blending the physical journey with spiritual and intellectual growth. By now, the Jesuit understood the Templar system as a multidimensional framework. Rivers served as navigational guides, mountains as orientation beacons, stone alignments as instruction, and the stars as verification points. The lost map was only one element within a broader, integrated structure designed to educate, test, and guide simultaneously. This path was far more than a trail to legendary cities. It was a structured exploration of perception, judgment, and the harmony between human effort and natural order. In reaching this stage of the journey, the Jesuit began to appreciate that the 7 golden cities represented far more than material reward. They were the culmination of a long, disciplined path, intended to cultivate insight, ethical awareness, and mastery of observation. The Templars' vision had transcended continents and centuries, creating a network that preserved knowledge, demanded discipline, and rewarded wisdom. Following the path was both a literal and philosophical journey, requiring travelers to engage with the terrain, the heavens, and themselves in a continuous exercise of discernment. By the conclusion of this leg of exploration, the Jesuit felt a deep connection with the Templars' intent. He was walking a path designed not only for physical guidance but for intellectual and moral development, a system that had endured time, climate, and human neglect. Each waypoint, alignment, and hidden sanctuary reflected extraordinary foresight and discipline, demonstrating the Templars' capacity to harmonize geography, astronomy, ethics, and human potential. And as he continued forward, the Jesuit could sense that he was approaching the final, most challenging stages of the route, stages that would reveal not only the legendary 7 golden cities but the full depth of the Templars' vision and the lessons they had meticulously encoded for the worthy traveler. As the Jesuit explorer continued along the path marked by the lost map, the journey increasingly revealed the depth of the Templars' ingenuity and foresight. Every step seemed to unveil another layer of their multidimensional system, a framework that combined geography, astronomy, ethics, and strategy into a seamless whole. Valleys, cliffs, and riverbeds were no longer simply natural features. They were carefully chosen, serving simultaneously as markers, lessons, and safeguards. Each waypoint demanded observation, reflection, and discernment, reinforcing the idea that the lost map was as much a moral and intellectual guide as it was a route toward hidden cities. In a particularly remote mountainous stretch, the Jesuit encountered a series of stones arranged in a deliberate geometric pattern. At first, the formations appeared random, shaped only by erosion over centuries. But closer examination revealed precise alignments corresponding to triangles, circles, and intersecting lines depicted on the lost map. Shadows cast by these stones at dawn and dusk revealed hidden carvings, providing essential guidance for the next leg of the journey. The Jesuit understood that the Templars had designed the terrain itself as an active instrument of learning, transforming travel into a continuous exercise of perception, reasoning, and patience. Errors in reading the environment could lead to dangerous detours, underscoring the Templars' insistence that knowledge required both intellect and discipline. The integration of celestial markers into the route became more pronounced. Certain rock formations, cliff faces, and stone alignments corresponded to solstices, equinoxes, and prominent stars. In one instance, a crescent-shaped rock cast a shadow onto a hidden carving only when the sun reached its zenith, revealing symbols that indicated the direction of a concealed chamber. This dual system of guidance, terrestrial and celestial, ensured that the path remained accurate across centuries, demonstrating the Templars' profound understanding of astronomy. Travelers were required to harmonize observation of the environment with awareness of the heavens, creating a journey that demanded intellectual engagement and attunement to natural cycles. Hidden sanctuaries along the route became increasingly intricate. Many were located in caves, under rock ledges, or obscured by vegetation. Within these spaces, the Jesuit discovered carefully arranged artifacts, ceramic fragments, tools, and remnants of manuscripts inscribed with symbols identical to those on the lost map. These sanctuaries were not simply refuges. They were repositories of knowledge, providing guidance, confirmation, and a moral checkpoint for travelers. Each sanctuary functioned as a node in an interconnected network, linking practical survival with intellectual insight and ethical evaluation. The Templars had created a system resilient enough to endure centuries of environmental change and human neglect, ensuring that their legacy remained accessible only to those capable of reading its signs. Local oral histories began to converge with the physical evidence. Villagers recounted tales of pale, disciplined strangers who had arrived centuries earlier, teaching navigation, astronomy, and practical skills while leaving subtle markers in the environment. While previously dismissed as folklore, these stories gained credibility when matched with the stone alignments, hidden chambers, and celestial markers the Jesuit encountered. The Templars had carefully integrated their work into both the environment and the collective memory of the land, creating a network of knowledge that could survive the passage of time and the disruptions of conquest. The moral and ethical dimension of the path became increasingly evident. Certain routes required patience, attention, and careful reasoning, while others provided sustenance or confirmation only to those who correctly interpreted prior markers. Knowledge without ethical grounding, the Templars implied, was dangerous and incomplete. The lost map functioned as both guide and moral filter, allowing only those with integrity, intelligence, and discernment to continue. The journey was as much about cultivating virtue and wisdom as it was about reaching the 7 golden cities. By this stage, the Jesuit recognized the Templars' achievement in creating a multidimensional framework that integrated geography, astronomy, ethics, and intellectual challenge. Rivers guided, mountains oriented, stone alignments instructed, and celestial observations verified. The lost map was a single element within a broader, enduring system designed to educate, test, and guide. This was not merely a journey toward legendary cities. It was a meticulously orchestrated path of learning, observation, and ethical development. The Jesuit began to appreciate that the 7 golden cities represented more than myth or material wealth. They were the culmination of a journey structured to cultivate insight, moral discernment, and mastery of observation. The Templars' vision had transcended continents and centuries, creating a living network that preserved knowledge, demanded discipline, and rewarded wisdom. Each waypoint and sanctuary was a step in a broader curriculum, guiding travelers toward both physical and philosophical enlightenment. As the explorer advanced, he sensed the weight of centuries pressing down upon him. Each stone, shadow, and celestial alignment was a whisper from the past, a testament to the Templars' genius, discipline, and foresight. They had harmonized human effort with the rhythms of nature, embedding lessons in survival, ethics, and observation across vast landscapes. And as he moved closer to the final stages of the journey, the Jesuit could feel the convergence of history, knowledge, and legend, the threshold of the 7 golden cities, and the culmination of a vision designed to endure beyond time itself. As the Jesuit explorer pressed onward into the final stages of the lost map's path, the full scope of the Templars' ingenuity became increasingly apparent. The journey had long transcended the physical act of travel. It had evolved into a test of intellect, perception, and moral fortitude. Every valley, ridge, and hidden gorge was intentionally selected, each serving simultaneously as a waypoint, a lesson, and a safeguard. It was a multidimensional system where human judgment, ethical discernment, and observational skill were as crucial as the map itself. The Templars had designed a journey that demanded engagement with both the physical and metaphysical, ensuring that only those capable of understanding its intricacies could reach the ultimate prize, the legendary 7 golden cities. In one particularly remote mountain corridor, the Jesuit observed a remarkable convergence of natural and constructed markers. Stones were arranged in precise geometric formations, reflecting complex patterns of triangles, circles, and intersecting lines depicted on the lost map. At dawn, sunlight projected shadows that illuminated hidden inscriptions, signaling the correct direction forward. At night, the same formations aligned with celestial markers, stars, constellations, and the moon's trajectory, reinforcing the accuracy of the path. The Jesuit understood that the Templars had created a system where the landscape itself functioned as a teaching instrument, blending practical navigation with intellectual and spiritual training. The path was a test. Misreading a shadow or ignoring a subtle alignment could result in lost time or even danger. The celestial integration became increasingly sophisticated as the explorer advanced. Some markers only revealed their significance at specific times of the year, solstices, equinoxes, or particular stellar alignments. In one isolated canyon, a narrow fissure in a rock projected a thin beam of sunlight onto a carved symbol only during the winter solstice, revealing a coded direction to a nearby sanctuary. These alignments demonstrated that the Templars had constructed a system resilient enough to survive centuries of environmental and political change. Navigation was inseparable from observation, requiring travelers to attune themselves to both terrestrial and cosmic cues. It was an education in patience, precision, and the harmony between human effort and natural order. Hidden sanctuaries along the route grew more intricate and purposeful. Many were carefully concealed beneath overhangs, inside caves, or within natural depressions in the landscape. Within these spaces, the Jesuit found meticulously arranged artifacts, ceramic vessels, tools, and fragments of manuscripts inscribed with the same symbols as those on the lost map. Each sanctuary functioned as both a checkpoint and a repository of knowledge, offering shelter, confirmation, and instruction. They were carefully curated to preserve the wisdom of previous travelers and Templars alike, creating a network that transcended generations and ensured that the path could still guide those who possessed the intellect and character to interpret it correctly. Local traditions began to mirror the evidence the Jesuit uncovered. Villagers told of pale, disciplined strangers who had arrived centuries before, teaching astronomy, navigation, and practical skills, leaving markers for others to follow. Once dismissed as folklore, these accounts now aligned with physical reality. Stone alignments, celestial markers, hidden chambers, and inscriptions all corroborated the oral histories. The Templars had integrated themselves into both the environment and the collective memory, ensuring that their network of knowledge could survive both time and upheaval. The moral dimension of the journey became increasingly pronounced. Certain paths were intentionally challenging, demanding careful reasoning, patience, and ethical discernment. Other routes offered sustenance, safety, or confirmation only to those who interpreted prior markers accurately. The Templars had understood that knowledge without virtue was dangerous, and the lost map acted as both a guide and a filter, permitting only travelers with intelligence, integrity, and careful observation to continue. The journey was as much about cultivating character and wisdom as it was about reaching the legendary cities themselves. By this stage, the Jesuit had come to appreciate the Templars' multidimensional system in its entirety. Rivers guided, mountains oriented, stones instructed, and the stars verified. The lost map was only one part of a larger, enduring network designed to educate, test, and guide in equal measure. The journey toward the 7 golden cities was therefore both literal and philosophical, a disciplined path of learning, observation, and moral development. The explorer began to sense the proximity of the 7 golden cities, not as a mere physical destination but as the culmination of centuries of intellectual and ethical design. Each waypoint, inscription, and celestial alignment had prepared him for this threshold, imparting lessons in observation, judgment, and ethical responsibility. The Templars' vision had spanned continents and centuries, preserving a network of knowledge and guidance resilient enough to survive the passage of time, conquest, and environmental change. And as the Jesuit advanced toward the final stages, he felt the weight of history pressing upon him. The footsteps of centuries of travelers, the ingenuity of a secretive order, and the promise of discovery that extended far beyond material treasure, toward wisdom, insight, and understanding that had been meticulously safeguarded for the worthy few. As the Jesuit explorer approached the final stretch of the Lost Maps trail, a profound sense of culmination settled over him. The journey, which had begun as a quest for hidden cities, had transformed into an odyssey of intellect, observation, and moral discernment. Every step along this path had tested patience, judgment, and awareness, teaching lessons far beyond mere navigation. Valleys, cliffs, rivers, and stone formations were no longer just natural features. They were teachers, guardians, and checkpoints in a vast, multidimensional system carefully constructed by the Templars. He now understood that the 7 golden cities represented more than wealth or myth. They were the culmination of a journey designed to awaken insight, wisdom, and understanding in those capable of interpreting the signs. In the final valleys leading to what the map suggested was the location of the first golden city, the Jesuit encountered a remarkable synthesis of markers. Natural formations, celestial alignments, and human-made inscriptions converged in a single, coherent system. Stones placed with geometric precision created alignments that interacted with the sunlight, shadows, and constellations in intricate patterns, revealing pathways and hidden sanctuaries. The Jesuit realized that this was the pinnacle of the Templars' design, a culmination where the lessons of observation, reasoning, and ethical discernment converged, guiding the traveler to the ultimate reward. This network was no longer just a tool for survival or navigation. It was a living curriculum that had endured centuries, demanding mastery of every skill and insight cultivated along the journey. Hidden within this final stretch were the most complex sanctuaries he had encountered. Carved into cliffs and concealed beneath natural overhangs, these chambers contained artifacts of extraordinary precision. Carefully arranged stone instruments, remnants of manuscripts, and ceremonial objects aligned with celestial cycles. These sanctuaries served not merely as way stations but as repositories of Templar wisdom, designed to preserve knowledge across generations. The Jesuit understood that each chamber was a test as much as a resource. Only those who had mastered observation, ethical judgment, and the interpretive skills embedded along the path could access and comprehend their secrets. It was a convergence of practical survival, intellectual rigor, and spiritual insight, reflecting the Templars' extraordinary foresight. Celestial guidance reached its apex in this final approach. The positioning of stones, cliffs, and valleys corresponded to solstices, equinoxes, and specific star alignments, guiding the traveler with precise timing. In one particularly striking instance, the sun at dawn projected a narrow beam of light through a fissure in a rock, illuminating a carved symbol that indicated the entrance to a hidden chamber. Simultaneously, the orientation of certain constellations confirmed the location and distance to the next waypoint. The Jesuit realized that the Templars had created a system resilient to both time and environmental change, integrating astronomy into their navigation to provide guidance and confirmation across centuries. Local oral histories aligned seamlessly with these physical discoveries. Stories of pale strangers who had arrived centuries earlier, teaching skills in astronomy, navigation, and practical survival while leaving subtle markers, were corroborated by the hidden sanctuaries, stone alignments, and celestial indicators. The Templars had not only left behind a physical route, they had embedded their wisdom into the landscape and collective memory, ensuring that knowledge could endure even when political and environmental upheavals threatened to erase it. The moral and ethical framework of the journey became most apparent in these final stages. Certain paths required restraint, careful analysis, and judgment. Others provided guidance or confirmation only to those who had correctly interpreted previous markers. The Templars had understood that knowledge without virtue was incomplete and potentially dangerous. The lost map functioned as both a guide and a moral filter, allowing only travelers of integrity, intelligence, and discernment to reach the culmination of the path. The journey was therefore as much about internal mastery as it was about external discovery. As the Jesuit reached the outer edges of what the map indicated as the 7 golden cities, he was struck by the realization that the journey itself was the true treasure. The cities were a symbolic and practical culmination, a reward for the disciplined, patient, and perceptive traveler who had successfully navigated the multidimensional challenges of the path. Every stone, shadow, celestial alignment, and hidden sanctuary had prepared him for this moment, teaching lessons in observation, ethics, and the integration of human understanding with the natural and celestial world. In the final approach, the Jesuit felt the presence of the Templars' century-spanning vision. Their legacy was not merely material. It was a framework of knowledge, ethics, and foresight, carefully designed to endure across generations. The lost map, the network of sanctuaries, the encoded markers, and celestial alignments together formed a testament to human ingenuity, patience, and moral cultivation. The 7 golden cities were both a literal and philosophical destination, a place where the lessons of the journey coalesced, revealing the profound depth of the Templars' ambition and wisdom. Standing at the threshold of the first golden city, the Jesuit realized that he had walked in the footsteps of visionaries who had transcended time and geography, embedding their knowledge in ways that demanded skill, virtue, and insight. The cities were not merely a reward. They were a reflection of the journey itself, a culmination of learning, observation, and ethical discipline, preserved for those capable of understanding it. And in this revelation, he grasped the enduring truth of the lost map. The Templars had created a path not only toward legendary cities but toward wisdom, understanding, and the timeless integration of human knowledge with the natural and cosmic order, leaving a legacy that would challenge and inspire any seeker willing to follow in their footsteps. As the Jesuit stepped fully into the heart of the first of the legendary 7 golden cities, a profound realization swept over him. The journey was never solely about material wealth or mythical treasure. Every step along the lost map's path had been a carefully orchestrated lesson in perception, judgment, and ethical discernment. The Templars had constructed a system that harmonized the physical, intellectual, and spiritual dimensions of a traveler's experience. The cities themselves, once thought to be mere repositories of gold and riches, revealed instead a living testament to human ingenuity, discipline, and foresight. The structures, artifacts, and inscriptions he encountered were not random. They were the culmination of centuries of meticulous planning, designed to reward insight, virtue, and attentiveness. The city's architecture demonstrated the same precision evident throughout the journey. Buildings aligned with celestial events, streets followed geometric patterns that mirrored the Templars' sacred symbols, and open plazas were positioned to catch the light at specific times of year, signaling hidden features or inscriptions. Even the placement of water sources and vegetation revealed advanced planning, providing both sustenance and subtle navigational cues for travelers who had earned the right to enter. The Jesuit understood that every element of the city was intentionally designed as both a practical resource and a lesson in observation, encouraging careful attention to detail, patience, and analytical thinking. Within the city, hidden chambers and repositories awaited those who could interpret the lost map and its associated markers. These spaces contained artifacts, manuscripts, and ceremonial objects, arranged with extraordinary care. Each item offered insight into the Templars' knowledge of astronomy, engineering, navigation, and philosophy. The Jesuit realized that the cities were not merely destinations. They were living classrooms, designed to extend the lessons of the journey to those who had successfully navigated its challenges. The Templars had embedded layers of information, ensuring that knowledge could be preserved and transmitted across generations, even in the absence of formal teaching. Celestial alignments within the city were particularly striking. Certain plazas and structures interacted with sunlight, moonlight, and starlight to reveal hidden symbols, trigger shadows that indicated directions, or illuminate inscriptions at precise times. These alignments confirmed that the Templars had mastered the integration of astronomy with architecture and landscape, creating a system that functioned as a multidimensional guide. Travelers who had followed the lost map with attention and care could read these signs, unlocking deeper understanding and insight into both the city and the broader network of knowledge it represented. The moral and ethical dimensions of the journey reached their culmination here. The challenges embedded along the path, the tests of observation, patience, and judgment, had prepared the Jesuit to understand and navigate the city. The Templars had designed the system to reward virtue and discernment, ensuring that knowledge and access were granted only to those capable of ethical reflection and careful reasoning. The 7 golden cities were therefore as much an ethical and intellectual achievement as they were a physical destination, reflecting the values the Order had preserved and transmitted over centuries. As the explorer delved deeper into the city, he began to perceive a profound interconnectedness between all he had experienced along the journey and the city itself. Rivers and valleys, stone markers, celestial alignments, hidden chambers, and moral tests had all converged to lead him here. The lost map was more than a physical guide. It was a multidimensional system designed to cultivate knowledge, ethical awareness, and human potential. Each step of the journey, every challenge, and every observation had been deliberately orchestrated to prepare the traveler for this final revelation. The Jesuit understood that the true treasure of the 7 golden cities was not gold or precious materials but the knowledge, wisdom, and insight encoded throughout the journey. The Templars had created a path that spanned continents and centuries, combining geography, astronomy, morality, and intellectual rigor into a system that challenged and refined the mind and spirit. The cities were the apex of this design, the place where the lessons of centuries could be understood in their entirety, and where the traveler could reflect on the integration of human knowledge with natural and cosmic order. Standing at the center of the city, the Jesuit felt a deep sense of connection with the Templars who had crafted this extraordinary legacy. He realized that he was not merely witnessing the endpoint of a journey but engaging with a vision that transcended time. The lost map and the 7 golden cities embodied a philosophy in which human observation, ethical conduct, intellectual skill, and harmony with the natural and celestial world were inseparable. The Templars' foresight, discipline, and ingenuity had created a system capable of guiding, testing, and rewarding travelers across centuries, a testament to the enduring power of knowledge and virtue. In that moment, the Jesuit recognized the ultimate truth behind the lost map. The journey itself, the careful attention to detail, the ethical challenges, and the cultivation of insight were the real reward. The 7 golden cities were both a physical and philosophical culmination, a tangible manifestation of wisdom earned through perseverance, discernment, and moral integrity. And as he reflected on the centuries of effort and foresight encoded into the landscape, markers, and architecture, he understood that the Templars had created not just a hidden route, but a living legacy, one that challenged, enlightened, and inspired all who dared to follow in their footsteps. The Jesuits stood at the heart of the final Golden City, the culmination of a journey that had stretched across rugged mountains, hidden valleys, and secret sanctuaries. He breathed deeply, feeling the weight of centuries pressing against the stones beneath his feet, and the silence of a place untouched by time. The journey along the lost map had transformed him, and he now understood the Templars' vision in a way that had eluded him until this very moment. The 7 golden cities were not merely a reward for endurance or a repository of material treasure. They were an intricate, living manifestation of knowledge, ethics, and human potential. Every element of the city, from its geometry to its celestial alignment, had been meticulously planned to test, educate, and elevate the traveler who had proved worthy of its secrets. The streets themselves spoke of deliberate design. They were not random pathways, but a carefully arranged network, mirroring the geometric patterns found along the lost map. Triangles, circles, and intersecting lines that encoded guidance, observation, and moral instruction. Each turn, each plaza, and each open courtyard served as both orientation and lesson. Sunlight at specific hours illuminated hidden symbols, guiding the observer toward concealed chambers or inscriptions. Moonlight revealed different alignments, sometimes casting shadows that directed attention to subtle engravings or architectural cues. Even the movement of the stars above was accounted for, with the positions of constellations, the waxing and waning of the moon, and the solstices integrated into the city's structure. This was not simply a city, it was a multidimensional classroom, a system of learning that spanned centuries. Hidden chambers within the city were even more extraordinary. Carved into cliffs, beneath overhangs, or behind seemingly ordinary facades, these sanctuaries contained objects of profound significance. Ceremonial tools, manuscripts, symbolic relics, and fragments of astronomical instruments. Everything was arranged with precision and purpose, designed to transmit knowledge across generations. The Jesuit realized that these chambers were more than storage. They were carefully curated repositories of wisdom. They held instructions for navigation, philosophy, mathematics, and morality, encoded in ways that could be deciphered only by those who had demonstrated observation, patience, and ethical discernment along the journey. Each chamber was a checkpoint for both intellect and character, a reminder that the journey's trials had prepared him to receive and preserve the knowledge contained here. The celestial alignments of the city were breathtaking in their precision. Some structures aligned perfectly with the sunrise or sunset during solstices, casting long shadows across plazas and revealing hidden inscriptions. Other markers responded only to the light of the full moon, illuminating carvings or pointing toward secret passages. Even the stars above, familiar constellations that had guided travelers for centuries, intersected with the city's geometry in ways that suggested planning with an almost impossible level of foresight. The Jesuit understood that the Templars had designed the city not merely for navigation, but for continuous education, teaching travelers to harmonize terrestrial observation with celestial knowledge. Each step, each glance, and each shadow became a lesson in perception, timing, and attention to detail. The moral dimensions of the city were equally profound. Throughout the journey, the Jesuit had encountered paths that demanded ethical judgment as well as practical skill. Certain routes offered sustenance or safety only to those who interpreted previous markers correctly, while others concealed hidden dangers that could mislead or harm the careless. The Templars had created a system where knowledge and virtue were inseparable. Here, in the city that philosophy reached its apex, access to certain chambers or inscriptions required careful reasoning and ethical awareness. The lost map functioned not only as a physical guide but also as a moral filter, ensuring that only those who demonstrated integrity, patience, and discernment could engage fully with the city's secrets. The 7 golden cities were therefore not only physical destinations but ethical and intellectual achievements, demanding that the traveler demonstrate worthiness on every level. The Jesuit wandered deeper into the city, tracing the patterns of its architecture, its plazas, and its hidden sanctuaries. He noted that even water sources and vegetation had been deliberately placed. Streams flowed along paths designed to indicate direction, while certain trees marked seasonal changes or concealed symbols. The integration of natural resources, human design, and celestial mechanics reflected the Templars' extraordinary ability to harmonize knowledge and environment. The city itself was a multidimensional instrument, simultaneously functional, educational, and symbolic. Every aspect of it taught lessons in observation, resourcefulness, patience, and moral discernment. Local legends, which had once seemed like quaint folklore, now resonated with undeniable truth. Villagers had long told stories of pale, disciplined strangers who arrived centuries earlier, teaching skills in navigation, astronomy, and craft, leaving subtle markers in the landscape and the city. Now, standing in the Golden City, the Jesuits saw the tangible reality behind these tales. The hidden chambers, stone alignments, celestial indicators, and architectural precision all bore witness to the presence of the Templars and their extraordinary foresight. They had not merely left behind cities. They had embedded lessons, knowledge, and ethical guidance into a system designed to endure the centuries, accessible only to those capable of interpreting it correctly. The culmination of the journey revealed the ultimate lesson of the lost map. The real treasure was not gold or riches, but the cultivation of knowledge, virtue, and insight. Every waypoint, shadow, inscription, and celestial alignment along the path had prepared the Jesuit for this moment, training his perception, intellect, and ethical judgment. The 7 golden cities were a living testament to the Templars' vision, a tangible manifestation of the values they held most dear: observation, patience, intellect, integrity, and harmony with the natural and cosmic world. The Jesuit could now see the continuum of history that had led him here. The Templars, centuries earlier, had crafted a journey that spanned continents and generations, embedding lessons in the very fabric of the landscape and the cities themselves. Walking these streets, observing the celestial alignments, exploring hidden chambers, he felt connected to a lineage of knowledge and wisdom that reached back across time. The lost map was not merely a guide. It was a living bridge between past and present, a system designed to challenge, educate, and inspire every traveler who dared to follow in the footsteps of the Order. Every artifact, stone marker, and shadowed inscription was a testament to human ingenuity and foresight. The Templars had understood that knowledge must be preserved, interpreted, and ethically applied to have meaning. The Golden Cities were not merely physical destinations but philosophical and spiritual achievements, where the traveler could reflect on the integration of intellect, morality, and observation. They were the culmination of a journey that demanded discipline, insight, and virtue at every step. The Jesuit paused at the center of the city, contemplating the full scope of what he had experienced. The lost map, the hidden sanctuaries, the celestial alignments, and the encoded symbols had all converged to bring him to this profound realization. The journey itself was the ultimate reward. The 7 golden cities were both a literal and symbolic culmination of centuries of Templar planning, a manifestation of knowledge, foresight, and ethical guidance. The Templars had created a system that transcended time, one capable of teaching, testing, and rewarding the intellect and character of those willing to undertake the path. In this final moment of revelation, the Jesuit understood the timeless truth embedded in the Templars' design. That true treasure is measured not in gold or material wealth, but in wisdom earned through observation, patience, ethical discernment, and intellectual rigor. The lost map and the 7 golden cities were an enduring invitation, a challenge to humanity to pursue knowledge, virtue, and understanding. Every step of the journey, every shadow, and every celestial alignment had been a lesson in how to live with awareness, integrity, and insight. Standing amidst the hidden wonders of the Golden City, the Jesuit felt an overwhelming sense of connection, not only to the Templars who had constructed this extraordinary system, but to the continuum of human potential they had sought to preserve. The journey had taught him that knowledge, when paired with ethical application, could transcend centuries, climates, and human turmoil. The 7 golden cities were a reminder that the path of wisdom requires dedication, perception, and moral clarity, and that the rewards for such effort are immeasurable and enduring. As he turned to gaze upon the final horizon of the city, the Jesuit understood that the Templars' vision extended far beyond legend, treasure, or conquest. It was a philosophy encoded in stone, shadow, and star, designed to guide, teach, and challenge those willing to engage with it fully. The lost map, the path, and the cities themselves formed a multidimensional legacy, a bridge connecting human curiosity, intellect, morality, and the cosmos. And in that moment, the Jesuit realized that he had not merely found cities of gold, but had discovered the enduring, transformative power of knowledge, virtue, and foresight, the true legacy of the Templars, preserved for those daring enough to follow in their footsteps. The journey had reached its climax, but its lessons extended far beyond the stones and celestial markers of the Golden City. The Jesuit carried with him the understanding that every step, every observation, and every ethical decision along the path was part of a greater continuum, a system designed not only to navigate geography, but to navigate the human mind, spirit, and potential. The 7 golden cities, once thought to be the culmination of a quest for treasure, were instead a monument to wisdom, patience, and ethical engagement, challenging all who would follow the lost map to measure themselves against centuries of human ingenuity and moral foresight. In this final reflection, the Jesuit realized the profound truth of the Templars' vision, that history, knowledge, and virtue, carefully preserved and thoughtfully applied, can illuminate paths across centuries, transforming those willing to undertake the journey. The lost map and the 7 golden cities were more than a physical challenge. They were an invitation to explore, learn, reflect, and grow, a testament to human potential, and a reminder that the greatest treasures are not those that can be taken, but those that are earned through insight, integrity, and the courage to follow a path of enduring wisdom.